as well, so I think we can go ahead and get that fired off. First order of business is to conduct a roll call. Ms. Carla?
Mr. Whitten?
Here.
Mr. Flanagan? Mr. McLaughlin?
Here.
Mr. Harrison?
Here.
Ms. Charelli? Absent. Mr. Brunel?
Here.
Mr. Norvell? Absent. Mr. Franks?
Here.
Mr. Boyer?
Here.
Mr. Knott?
Here.
Ms. George?
Here.
Mr. Washington?
Present.
Mr. Repolz? Absent. Rubble?
Repulse.
Is absent. We have a quorum.
Good, I'm here too.
Chair Morley. Mayor Trentalis.
Thank you.
Just a piece of furniture today.
So we have a quorum, excellent. Minutes were circulated from our March 2nd meeting. I'd like a motion on those minutes, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on those minutes as presented? Okay, here no discussion. All in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries, minutes are approved. Moving on to introduction of new members. We have two new members. One is here, Mr. Washington. Before I introduce, have you introduce yourself, I'd like to just say, as the chair, it's been really nice seeing you here as a member of the public, for as many meetings as you came to. I found your dialogue and information important to us. And I think it meant a lot to us to see you committed to that as a member of the public, coming here, speaking, and bringing some ideas and thoughts and experience and perspective that was important to us. So once again, thank you for stepping up and volunteering as part of this great board. Take a few minutes and just kind of enlighten us as to who you are, what your background is, and why you want to be here.
Okay, I'll stand up then, why not?
Excellent.
Robert Washington, I come from the construction industry. Been doing construction for over 25, 26 years. Marine for maybe 10. Bridges, infrastructure, stuff like that. Reason why, I've been working with Norbert for over 10 years. He's been grooming me and brought me here, and I said, you know what, I think I'd be a good fit to this. So, I believe in the construction side of it, because I think we do need a facelift inside the new river. And if we all work together, I think we can pull it off. That's why I'm here.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate your time and we appreciate your engagement. And I can tell you, looking around the table, there's a lot of brain power here, a lot of guys, a lot of different expertise. Ms. George brings an exposure to our condo associations and our waterway residents. I think it's invaluable to us. And Norbert, you certainly have been a fixture in the marine industry for decades. So your knowledge is invaluable, but I am sure Mr. Washington's knowledge is going to be right there with you and backing you up and helping fill in the gaps if there are any. Ed, I see you're here. Excellent.
Came just
Please.
on time.
But I have people just from out of town, so I can't stay too long,
Well,
but I'll.
We're at an ideal point of introducing our new members. So as our second new member, if you don't mind giving us a few minutes of your time and just kind of explaining who you are, your interests, and why you're here with us now.
Okay, I'm Ed Repholz. My parents moved us to Fort Lauderdale in 1960. Went to some grade school here, went to St. Thomas High School, went on to the University of South Florida, got an accounting degree. Married my high school sweetheart, and we married, we celebrated 51 years. We have 5 children and 9 grandchildren. Hey, you took my name.
Oh, yeah, man.
That's nice.
It's a professional organization.
If I fall asleep and wake up, I'll remember who I am. Career-wise, I worked for Anheuser-Busch for 20 years. Wound up, I was at 4 different breweries. I managed the Newark Brewery. At that time, it was the 5th largest brewery in the world. Got tired of that and went into business and myself. Had a consulting practice in IT security and did a lot of citrus as up in the road. Spun out a product, sold it to Cisco, and I retired. Did very well. And moved back down here. We always had a second place in a condo on the beach. And so for the last 40 years, we've been coming and staying a weekend, and then staying a week, and then staying a month, and got to retire to stay here full time. Personally, I like golf. We're going to course today. and I like boating. I've been boating all my life. I boated out here in the '60s, and I own several different boats. So right now, with 9 grandchildren, I have a pontoon boat.
That's a
And
It's okay.
yeah, I know, it's like, I've had, fishing boats and fast boats, and then with 9 grandchildren, this fits my lifestyle right now. So we just stay in and look around, and it's beautiful out there, so that's me.
Well, it's hard to beat Fort Lauderdale for boating.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a super yacht or a pontoon boat, I gotta tell you, it's not a bad way to spend a day. Welcome, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your commitment to serve. You know, we pride ourselves on a diversity of knowledge, expertise, and abilities, and I think we've got a pretty good group right now that you've joined, so welcome to the group. And Mr. Mayor, again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for nominating me.
He's my man.
Yeah.
That's it.
I was on FXE board for 5 years, and I chaired that for the last 3 years of that term, but I turned out there. And also ran for city District 4, and with a crowded slate, didn't quite make it. But anyway, that's it.
We serve in the ways we can.
Yeah.
Excellent, well, thank you very much. Moving on with tonight's agenda then, from our introduction of new members, Mr. Washington and Ed both. Let's move on to item 5, Waterway Crime and Building Safety Report. Sergeant?
Good evening, everybody. For the month of March, the Fort Lauderdale Police Marine Unit wrote 64 citations and went to 44 calls for service. Those calls for service included, they had a stolen jet ski from the Coral Ridge Yacht Club, which they reported and was caught on camera. The jet ski was recovered the same day across Sunrise Bay over there. It's like 2 juveniles got in there and took a jet ski that had keys in it and joyrided it. So they did recover that. Also, there was another jet ski stolen from the Doubletree jet ski rental place. It was stolen. One of our Marine units working on the Emily grant spotted the jet ski, attempted to stop it. It took off and ended up crashing into the seawall. And the assailant escaped on foot. The jet ski, though damaged, was also recovered. We had everybody out there, perimeter, the helicopter, they were looking for him. There was no, we didn't end up finding him that night, but there was video of the suspects, and the Detective Bureau is currently working that case as well. There was a vessel broken into at 1881 Southeast 17th Street, where fishing rods were taken off that vessel. Looked like I'm sorry, not fish. This is the one where the e-bike was stolen off the deck of the boat. Looked like a crime of opportunity during that one, and they processed the boat for fingerprints and was turned into the Detective Bureau for analysis. There was also one where fishing poles were taken, 1490 Southeast 15th Street. And the person did not want their boat processed there, but there was video. So that was turned over to NBC.com and the detectives to take a look at. What I take away from last month is that there was no Garmin GPSs taken. So I think us getting the word out to people to secure those things better has helped. Most people seem to really be bolting them down, and I think the word's gotten out there for that. So none of those were taken last month, which is, I think, a win for this, how many thefts we've had in the past. So hopefully that trend continues.
Thank you, sir. I know we spoke last month about the arrests in Miami-Dade regarding the Garmins, and if that ring was somehow aligned with the thefts up here. And it's always interesting when crime drops after someone's arrested.
Yeah, those guys didn't give any statements as far as I know, so I don't think they were able to link any of our thefts with that group, but most likely it is, but hopefully with some, ounce of prevention, helps a ton with that, so people who live in the city and vote in the city, they take the extra steps for the security of their items. It really helps out. These two burglaries seem like crimes of opportunities more than, somebody casing and looking for a certain item off.
Okay, appreciate that. Any questions from the board for Sergeant O'Neill? Ms. George?
Actually two. One is more of a statement. The president of West Marine happens to live in my building, and so I let her know about this, and she stated that they were working with their staff to make sure that they knew about the garments specifically. So I don't know exactly what they've done, but she stated that they were gonna be dealing with that as well. And then just a curiosity, I know this is this month, but just curious what was going on at 15th Street on Sunday afternoon with the large police presence, and it looked like somebody was in handcuffs around 4 in the afternoon.
You know what, I don't think my guys were involved, so I
Okay.
didn't get an update.
Yeah, there
on
was a
what was
large
there.
police presence there, so it was
Yeah.
just
I can find out, let you know, but.
Yeah. more curiosity than anything. I knew it might be on next month's update, so. Alright, that's it.
Okay. Well, kudos to West Marine. The more public information we get out about this, the better, quite honestly. Any other questions for the sergeant from the board? Mr. Mayor, any questions for?
No, I was just curious, the citations, what are they generally in the nature of?
Usually wake violation, I would say.
Wait, violence?
Yes, sir. So in the idle speed zone to the slow speed zone, when you're going too fast, that's too big of a wake. Normally, when I say citation, that could be a traditional ticket or it could be a warning citation. We usually try to educate first. A lot of people who do boat are new boaters or are tourists, and they don't quite understand what idle speed or slow speed may mean. So usually we try to educate them. We give them pamphlets that the county provides to us to let them know exactly what each sign means, and we explain them to them.
Well, the reason why I bring that up is because I continue to get complaints from people who live on the Sunrise Intercoastal, which is the west side of the Intercoastal, just south of the Sunrise Bridge, the Girard Bridge. People who have floating docks, they're constantly being banged up because they just don't respect the need to slow down there. And I just wondered, do we stake anybody out in that area? Because it has been a hot spot for a while.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely one of our more highly patrolled areas, I would say.
Okay.
And depending on where exactly they are, sometimes they are in the quote unquote run zone where they can do 25 miles an hour. My thought of that and my perspective is if there's somebody working in that zone, like on a floating dock or something like that, and you're going, even if you're doing the speed limit, then you should be cautious of the people out there working, or if there's even a paddleboard or something like that, you should be cautious of that, and that could rise to the level of careless operation of a vessel. But in the idle speed zone, that's definitely from the Middle River north to Coral Ridge Yacht Club. That's definitely one of our more patrolled areas.
Good to know that, because I still get people asking me about it.
Yeah.
Did you see any change with regards to, or people assuming that every place changed on the weekend, this past weekend with the date change? Because one of the things we noticed up behind us at the Portofino, all of a sudden everybody was, the second they left Las Olas Bridge were full balls to the
We're out
wall.
of management season now.
Yeah, and they, with the change, they
Well,
seem to be going
that zone,
fast.
that zone even.
It's always supposed to be.
It's always
but-
the weekend
yeah.
holidays is always
Right.
the slow speed there, so that shouldn't change any.
Right, but it seemed like a lot of people were assuming that April 1st came and it changed everywhere.
Yeah,
It's like people didn't know the rules,
yeah.
because we even spoke to some people in our own condo about it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have a higher number of traffic stops along that stretch
Right.
right now because the people, oh, it's April 1st.
I watched all you
Bye,
guys doing it.
Yeah.
Anything else from the board? Any questions from the public for Sergeant O'Neill? No? Okay,
Thank you, Sergeant.
thank you, Sergeant. The United States Coast Guard staff introduction is being delayed deferred to a future meeting. Unfortunately, their schedule conflicted with their presentation tonight, so they're gonna come in at a later date and introduce themselves and kind of discuss some of the concerns they have and some of the concerns that the board has regarding safety and freedom of navigation issues within the city. So that brings us to item 6, which is a dock waiver request for 1180 North Federal Highway, Unit 1502, Renee Byron. Andrew, who we have here for item 6?
We have, the applicant's representatives are here to answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay. Can they, please have them state their name for the record?
Yes. Your names. Names.
My name is Akbar Mandel, for Vocalist and Doctor South Florida. I'm a contractor. And this is Kayla.
Kayla McMullery.
She's our family.
Excellent. There's no presentation?
So, there's no formal, oh, you have a
We
presentation?
have the USB.
Oh, they have a USB, okay.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, perfect, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Okay.
Thank you. You got it. Thank you. Yes. Just verify.
Yes.
This is Twin Towers or?
This is Reva.
We're requesting a waiver for a setback for the wet base for the boat lift installation of this property. This is about a marina for the condo that they live in at 1180 North Federal Highway 67, which is specifically owned by the owner. Is renamed Berdon. And what the request is because due to the natures of the setup of the boat lifts is all basic outways. Typically when we have a boat lift installation, it tends to be parallel with the dock slip, but because of this, the nature of the slip, it has to be perpendicular, which is forced the lift to be set up perpendicular to the dock. So therefore, we requested a waiver for 25-foot setback. So the boat lift we have is a no profile boat lift. This is set out to be 34 feet long by 30 feet wide, which includes the wood pilings. They have 6 wood pilings. So there are 2 at the end, and 2 in the back, and 2 right in the middle. So give an even distribution of the lift set. And because it's like a platform for the boat. So we requested 16.6 feet exemption to add it to the 25-foot waiver because the lift is 34 feet long. So this is how they will look like. Since the boat is parked docking perpendicular to the dock, it will actually base it this way to the wet base. So the platform that the owner wanted to have will only be encased completely where the boat is. It will not be extended further out beyond what the boat would be. So it will be right within the boat space. And if the platform provided additional stability, more safety for the owner to be able to approach to the vessel. Since the lift tend to boat lift tend to have a lot of open space around it, and since the platform it gives it extra safety precautions for the boat owner to be able to approach to clean the boat or whatever they need to have. And it's no profile, so it's not having a suction on the top of it, so it'll be flush to the pier, finger pier slips. So it'll be slip 7 right here, and it already goes out to the top of this end. That's the mast, and the engine will be just below where this slip is, so it will not infringe on any space or take any unnecessary space for the boat to be. So it's within the boat space. So the valve will be right here, and the engine will be back here, just completely encased. And we're not infringe or encroach in any other dock slips personal space or the right line. as you can see, there's many other slips that are beyond 25-foot setback. So as you can see, there are multiple different boat lifts. And we have installed a few of them from our company in the same condo, in the same area. So it was requested in different boat sizes. Because each owner have a different size of boat, so they are tailored to the boat needs. And you can see, this is where the slip is, in the middle river. So you can see there's plenty of navigation space. So our lift will be just right here. And it will not infringe any navigation issue. So it will not take up any unnecessary space for the boat slip to be, in a navigational path. And you can see as we have installed a few others, like we have done this other slips as well, but they're also beyond the 25 feet setback, which we was granted for them. So we requested to do the same for this owner, so that the owner can enjoy the same right as many other homeowners have for their own slips. Any questions?
From the board, Mr. Whitten?
I just, so that last slide, you mentioned that you've done other docks at that, is it at that condominium?
Yeah.
So are any of the other docks, or whether they're low profile or not, are they also perpendicular?
Are all the other docks perpendicular?
Oh, what?
The other docks that we build, are they perpendicular?
All the other dots in this slip are perpendicular, there's no
Oh,
parallel, so they're
at
all
that condo.
perpendicular, they all have to face inwards, so that's why they all have that finger piers. Actually, you can see they all have finger piers
Yep.
on each slip, because all the boat has to come this way.
Not quite.
So they have all the space available to the homeowner, because it's a high-rise condos. So whoever owner wants to have that slip, they pay specifically
No, I
to
understand.
own that slip.
And how far out do the other slips go? Do any of them go out as far as you're requesting this waiver?
No, that's the one that we're requesting is the maximum known one. The other ones are less.
Looking at the agenda, most of them are 30 to 33 foot total distance, so are,
33-foot boats in there?
yeah,
Is
so
it
are,
in there now? To vote in the slip now?
Right now.
I saw the piling that you already have the pile installed?
Yes.
You have the pile installed?
They have a mooring pilings, but
I
they
see
do
the,
not have a
I see the
boat
6 piles
pilings.
that are there, but what I'm saying is there a boat in that slip now? Even though it's not on the boat lift?
Is there a boat there right now?
At this time, yeah, he has a boat right now.
There is a boat, that's what I'm saying, so basically all you're doing is lifting the boat out of the water,
Yeah, boat out of
the
the
same
water.
size boat and everything else.
Yes.
So,
Thank you.
by the way, I kinda like your lifts, I like those lifts more so than just a regular lift, they're aesthetic looking, they're nice, they're actually easier to get in the boat, so I like your choice of those boat lifts, to be honest with you.
thank you. Jimmy?
Yeah, I'm unclear of that the waiver is asking for 41.6 feet, but the boat lift is 37 feet? 33 feet?
Longer.
34.
Lifts are longer.
No, but I mean, the whole boat slip lift is 34 feet, but the waiver is for 41 feet.
There's a marginal dock.
Yeah.
That extends from the property line, which is included in that 41-foot figure, because
There's a marginal dock that you see where the two of them meet, it looks
Yeah.
like one dock.
So the seawall, everything that.
Yes,
So it
from the
looks-
seawall out is what they're requesting.
It looks like it's a 34 foot no profile lift, a 4.2 foot, excuse me, marginal dock, and then a 2.7 foot seawall overhang
Okay.
from the wet
And
face.
so you put in a lot of the other docks that are, a lot of the other boat lifts that are there. Why did those people choose to go parallel with the dock instead of going this way? Because would be the easier way to go, you could put a bigger boat this way.
they're all perpendicular.
They're all perpendicular.
You saw the lifts in the pictures, and then all you saw were the boxes for the lifts, but they're perpendicular slips.
So I
When you
think,
see it across, the boat goes this way.
Jimmy, looking at it from what I can tell here, it looks like all the slips are perpendicular to the seawall. The other boat lifts
The
are
one in the photo right
perpendicular.
there is not.
Sure doesn't look
Jimmy.
hard to tell. Which one?
Oh, you're talking about this one, right?
Yes.
The reels are going out.
Doesn't look
Oh,
from here.
oh, oh,
The boat
okay.
goes out.
Yeah,
Hang on.
I've seen a couple boat lifts.
Only a couple?
Those docks are all.
Are these hydraulic?
No.
Are they hydraulic?
Yeah, they're,
Are
they work great.
they hydraulic?
Hydraulic, yes.
Really?
Yeah, and if you get a storm, you can remove the whole power.
Exactly.
Take it up, you can lower the platform into the water.
Basically,
And disconnect.
we have a cable
Beautiful
underneath
Yeah.
the pilings, and this one stays. The only thing that moves down is this platform,
Right.
and the water goes to up here. So when the boat comes in, it sits up here and then brings it back so you can walk around it. So that way, most the slips, the most common slip that you see happens to be this one, which means you have to lift the system on top of it, and the cable runs down. So this is less safer, but it's the cheapest because you still have a risk of falling into the water because you can't really access well. So we propose to have the platform that is extended all the way up to the edge, so you can walk onto the platform and get on the boat. It's much more safer, especially for the people who have back problems, leg problems, or able to just fall on the boat. It's much safer for them to gain access to it. So it's one of the common lifts that we have that provides accessibility for many other people, simply because they're not young as they used to be, or
Hey.
You just lost that boat.
Next.
Okay, I've got a question now. If you have a boater navigating at night and they're going down the waterway, this pier is gonna be sticking out a little bit more than the rest of them. What sort of lighting, reflectors, how can someone see that at nighttime? Do you have lights on it or reflectors?
Do you have light reflectors so other people?
well, we can add reflectors on it, but it should be inside the mooring pilings. So once you install the mooring piling, you can add a reflector on the mooring pilings
Okay.
as well, just so they know that there's obstruction there's pilings there.
Okay, good.
So
Yeah, one of the things they said, and the mayor is here, one thing you may even look into, the fact that the boat was already in a slip that's facing this up in here, the variances that we get, were basically saying that they were coming in here with a variance to move the boat from the water and lift it, put it on a lift. So they have to get a variance from that. So if the boat has already had, like, let's say, in time, they've had the route to their 25 feet or something, whatever it is, and the boat is in here, in order to get a lift, they would have to come here and get a variance to bring the variance and stuff up. Where if the boat is already, there's already a boat in the lift, if it came up, I said, that's something I think the city needs to look into, that if they've already had, that the boat is out, and if you already have something out 35 feet and stuff, the boat's in there, they're coming back, they decide to put the boat up on a lift, you have to get a variance in order to bring it up.
So the pilings are at 33 feet out? Did I hear that correctly?
Not yet.
Well, aren't there mooring pilings? How far are they?
Show the picture of the.
25.
25,
So
okay.
16.6
Right.
feet beyond that is the request for the new pilings.
Right.
So basically, looking at this and just comparing it to the other lifts that are at this address that we've heard from the past, there's shorter distance for the lifts because the permanent structure is just the lift. In this case, the permanent structure will be the entire length of the vessels for access and accessibility. That explains the extra, the extra distance out, because the rest of them have been 30 or 33 feet, so hopefully that clarifies that. It does look like it's also under the submerged land area that's defined, so they're not infringing past that point either. So any other questions or comments? Ms. George?
I just have a general question. It shows on the list there, slip 14 twice, 2 years in a row. So did they ask for one waiver and then come back with a bigger boat for another waiver? I happened to notice that when I was,
Oh,
because
yeah, you're right.
2019, slip 14 was twice. And I was just curious if they came in twice for waivers.
Maybe they don't.
The creep factor,
I can
exactly.
They got
The creep factor, want a bigger boat.
I can find
Post
out.
COVID.
I mean, not that it should apply, impact these guys, but
I can
it's
find
more
out.
of a general question when I noticed that.
It's the 7th lift, so site plan level 2 was required. They passed site plan level 2, and I noticed all properties within 300 feet. And that was over 250 properties. And I only heard from one party,
Yeah, no, it was,
just so you know.
it was more just a general question, cause I thought it was interesting that, cause we've talked about how people buy bigger boats. As soon as they get a bigger slip, then they buy a bigger boat and want another bigger slip. We're abnormal.
Exactly. Any other questions?
Yeah,
Michael?
Ted, what is the property located across the canal there? Is it, looks like just main road?
That's George English.
Oh, George English.
George English Park, yes, sir. Yeah, so that's one of the city's water ski areas, by the way. And I think there's only a few left in the city now that are actually designated water ski activity areas. But it is, I believe, 332 feet distance across.
Yes.
I think it's 332. It's a wide spot. I've got the exhibit right here, excuse me. 381. 332 on the shortest, 381 at the longest. So it's a pretty wide part of the middle river
There are
there.
no yachts coming under that bridge.
No.
You guys lifted it, but only a few feet, so. Any other comments from the board, questions? Okay, any questions or comments from members of the public on this agenda item? Okay, seeing none, bringing it back to the board, any questions? Last chance?
I'm gonna make a comment that it doesn't seem to be any different from any of the other boats that are there. It's all the same length, just a different way that the boat lift is in.
Correct.
I see no objection to
Okay.
this.
Okay, do we have a motion for this item?
Make a motion to approve.
Steve Whitten, motion, Norbert, second. Any discussion? All in favor? Voice vote?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Nice presentation. Ted, can I ask you a question? This is, I'm not even sure how to phrase this, but as I look at this application, we all approved it, we all felt comfortable, et cetera. At what point would we not feel comfortable? I mean, I know that's silly, but at what point do we feel they would have asked too much? Because I had no issue with this, but I know we're all a little concerned that they choke it off as well.
I think when we look at the waivers in the past, historically, Steve, we're looking at the intent of the homeowner. We're looking at the problem they're trying to solve, and we're looking at how has it been solved by others in the area. And, I share this belief with Jimmy, I believe, that as long as it's in line with the size of boats that they're trying to put in there and all that, by and large, it's okay.
So if the request was for 22 feet versus 16, would anybody have an issue?
Well, the question is, what if it's for 70 feet?
Well, no, I understand, but I'm trying to understand at what point what is our tolerance here? We know what it is on New River right now.
Well,
I'm just curious what it is on some of these areas.
I don't think we can make a blanket statement
Right,
because
that's what I understand.
even on this property, if you look at the actual submerged land area of this property, it steps back towards the extremis of it. So in the middle, it's wider, further out, then it steps down again as it gets to the property line. And to me, as long as they're within that submerged land zone, by and large, I think this board's been okay with
I
it.
think that's a great point.
Are there times when someone might come in and say, hey, I wanna put a 65-foot lift in, or a double lift, something like that? It certainly is, an extreme request at that point. It's beyond the norm, and it's now, at that point, interfering with navigation, because it's beyond the submerged land rights that they actually have.
I agree.
That's why they're asking, like in the commission, that we look at each one on an individual
Yep.
basis as opposed to just making a blanket thing.
Yeah.
All right?
And sometimes, the 30% rule and 25% rule makes sense in certain areas because it makes sense. In this area, the 30% rule, that's a big,
Of course.
but again, it's a water ski area.
That's
So you gotta think about the safety of the water ski vessel itself maneuvering and the person on the water ski rope coming around. The last thing we wanna see is someone getting smacked into a lift or a mooring pile out there.
In fact, the former chair of the Marine Board created the water skiing area designated.
Yep.
Years ago.
Absolutely. Okay, so moving on from that, any further discussion? No, we're good, okay. Item 7 has been deferred, the dock waiver request for Solar Isle Drive, so we're gonna move into item 8, which is a dock waiver request for 777 Southwest 6th Street, Andrew Shine representing Mr. Kerwin. And Mr. Shine, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the third go at this, correct?
I believe so.
So, while Mr. Shine is setting up his presentation, I'd like to kind of give a little background to our new members and members that may not have been fully versed on this issue in the past. These two waivers, 777 and 801, are together. They're adjacent properties owned by the same family, father and daughter, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
They originally came to this board under the previous chair. That's how long this has been going on. And we've been working, the past two requests have both been denied. The applicant and applicant's representative have worked with the board and worked with the city and worked with neighbors and all that to try to figure out what is the tolerance, what is acceptable to solve their problem without interfering with the neighbors or the safety of navigation. These two areas are on the New River. They're in a particular area that is used for vessels passing and vessels laying up. So there's been a lot of discussion. Last meeting, we had a ton of discussion on this issue regarding this area specifically. So I do want to commend Mr. Shine for working with the neighborhood and working on modifying this request, and thank Mr. Kerwin for coming back with a modified request. I'm looking forward to seeing it and hearing about it and seeing what our board has to say about it. So, nothing further, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Shine, representing the property owners here. I just want to set the stage a little, and I hope there's not sound on this because it could be quite loud. But this is what the property owners deal with on an almost daily basis. It is a very wide part of the river, and I know there's been discussion on speeding here. It is it's not a no wake zone. Just wait for the wake to hit it. Let's get going. But every day it is just it's consistent beating of the boat here. Let's show one more. I'll make this one a little bit quicker.
Less noisy.
So let's mute it.
So if we can pause that for a second, Andrew. Sergeant O'Neill, this is a minimum wake, but not a no wake, slow speed zone. So looking at the vessel that's actually transiting the property right now, as an officer, is that a ticketable wake level for this area? Definitely, okay, all right. So both videos probably have exceeded what's allowable for a wake? Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
And unfortunately, it does happen almost every single day. It would be great if it could be made into a no wake or an even lower zone. But people will still end up speeding. It happens. So while it may be just one speeding ticket for one person, if it happens this often, it'll damage the boat every time. So even if it's only once every 3 months, it's still going to be very damaging to the boat. I did look at the minutes from last meeting, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion on maybe a moratorium or something regarding restrictions for these waivers in the New River. Except I did see that under certain extraordinary circumstances, they could still move forward. And I truly believe this is an extraordinary circumstance just purely for their location where they're at. This is an aerial showing approximately where the pilings would be. The waterway width here ranges from about 290 to 250 on the east side. And with the pilings, there will still be 165 feet of navigable waterway here. We listened to the concerns and the balancing kind of the commercial concerns versus the concerns of the owners, or as the mayor put it, accommodation for the owners versus navigation. And I think we arrived at a balance between the two. I'm not going to say the balance is favorable towards the owner here. It's definitely more favorable towards the navigation side, but it'll at least help with the current condition that he has there. Navigation-wise, I don't think it really makes it doesn't really change anything. The pilings will be actually further south than the tip of the boat. So whether there's a boat there or whether there are pilings there, boats won't be able to go through that area as they're not able to today with the existing boat. So I think we found a good balance. And it was great to go through all this. Working with the neighbors was the easy part. I'm not gonna go there. Never mind.
So what did you change between this and the previous submission?
We reduced the request by 10 feet.
By 10 feet.
So there are existing 38, there are pilings that are existing now there that are 38 feet out, which doesn't extend past the boat, and it still causes all of that issue there. So we had originally asked, I believe the first one, which I was not a part of, asked for 63 or 64?
65.
65 feet.
Then it was 62.
Yeah, we came back with 60.
60, yeah.
And now we're here at 50, which I think, again, balancing that navigation versus accommodation, but still favorable towards the navigation side.
And if Jimmy, you may be able to help me on this. If I remember, there was a conversation, without looking at the minutes, from the very first first meeting on this issue, hearing questions, where a 50-foot number was kind of proposed by kind of our group as a suggestion. And the client at that point, with previous representation, chose to not accept that. But it was 50 foot, correct?
I don't recall what the number was that we
It was
did.
50?
It was in my notes, there was a recommendation, somebody tossed out 50 something.
Okay. So that number is kind of where that number came from, was through a conversation in previous work, I believe, Andrew. What size vessel is the owner planning on putting there?
The same one he has there now.
Help me out.
I believe it's about 45 feet.
Okay. And you had talked about the owner agreeing to a stipulation that a length restriction he's open to as well,
If
if we felt that was necessary?
yes, you can. I don't think it's necessary here because putting a 60-foot boat out there and having these pilings are gonna create even worse problems and damage to the boat than they have now. My only worry about that is like code compliance coming by, and if the tying of the boat is a little loose and it ventures out slightly past it, they can get code violations.
Well, we've actually got code enforcement here on our agenda later, so that'd be a discussion point with them.
Maybe some sort of reasonable one, but sorry, let me take that back. For this request, we cannot say it can't extend past the pilings because the existing boat extends past the pilings. So we definitely can't do it for this. Some other reasonable restriction, maybe.
But it's a 45 to 48 foot boat
Yes.
right now? Okay. So it sticks up merely to give space behind the vessel, between the vessel and is it a marginal dock?
Yeah.
Behind it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions for the board? Norbert?
Yeah, the one objection that we've had is the fact that what you're him hauling around and stuff on the sides of the boat. In other words, even, I tell you what, knowing a little bit about the marine environment, even if you put those piling out there, and I took the same video that you just showed over there with the pilings where you wanna put them, you're gonna have the boat doing exactly the same thing. Those pilings are not gonna stop that thing. The only way to do that is to have that at a totally no wake zone start. So, as long as those boats can still travel the same way, I don't care if you put the pilings on 75 feet, that boat's still gonna do its jumping up and down and everything else. But one of the things that the objection that we have, if I can show you on your picture in here, when the towboats and everything else come down, right over here is Little Florida. All the commercial boats, including the Jungle Queen and everything else, has to lay right in here until these boats come here and pass and go that way for anything coming down the river. They come through this narrow avenue here and they go here. These commercial boats, the towboats from Steel Towing and Towboats US, they lay right over on this side. And I know the last time when I think the owner or something came in here, he said one of the problems that he was having with his boats is actually the towboats and the Jungle Queen themselves. They're making the wake because when they start, they go up the river and stuff over there to doing it. That's why the boat that you have in there is actually too big for the property that where this is. And that's the problem. So if you're gonna go out more, there's nothing to stop anybody from putting a 70 or 80 foot boat in there. And then now it blocks the area where the towboats, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 towboats have to be into the same area. And they lay right here until the other ones southbound or eastbound come out. That's the problem that I have with putting anything in this area. This happens to be where Little Florida comes around, where you're seeing it in here. Any boat coming down through here, the Jungle Queen signals that it's coming out. These boats here have to lay all along in the edge of here. And those wakes, like you're saying, is right down here, if I'm not mistaken, that's Cooley's Landing. So there's also that same boat that's doing damage here is doing damage to here and also all the things in Cooley's Landing. So The right way to do that is put this as a no wake zone anywhere from around on here. That's the objection that I have is I talked to the towboat captains, they lay over here, Jungle Queen lays right in this area here until the eastbound traffic goes out.
Understood. We're keeping the pilings now behind the further south than the boat though. So with a 45 or 48 foot boat there, they already can't lay down there because there's
The
a
boat's
boat
in
in
the
the way.
Right.
I would love if this could be a no wake zone. That would definitely help. Again, people are still going to speed and it's still going to cause damage to the boat. That would help. And I also understand your point that a 50-foot piling isn't going to stop the boat getting damaged, but it will mitigate it. And that's all we're asking for here. We're not asking for a magic wand solution. We're asking for help. Because the towboat operators, you are correct. They are some of the ones causing these problems. And then they come out against the request, even though they're the ones causing the problem. So it's not an easy situation, but again, I think we found the balance that doesn't really harm navigability because it's further south than the boat is. But at least, again, it doesn't solve the problem, but it helps at least mitigate the problem.
All right, Jimmy, you're next.
Yeah, question for you, a hypothetical question. If you had put 60-foot pilings out there, would the owner be willing then to accept that there was some rule or law written in where he's not allowed to exceed those pilings?
Yeah, we actually agreed to that last hearing when we were proposing the 60 feet.
Okay, so that is acceptable. Because, the big issue that, with here is that the enforcement, as you have enforcement of the wake, seems to not be able, but also that this house may be sold later on, and further out that you put those triple pilings, bigger the boat that you can put there. And legally, you can take up 30%. So this area, you could have a 90-foot plus boat in that area. So that would be without coming to us, without doing anything, not breaking any code,
With 60 feet.
at all.
If that's 60 feet.
You could safely put it there.
At 50 feet, how far can
No, I mean, with any type of,
With the
whatever you're
30%
doing out
rule.
there,
Yeah.
you legally could put a 95-foot, 94 point something foot boat in that slip and dock it there, but you can't because of the weight, because of, the conditions. So the only thing that allows you to put a big boat like that would be triple pilings out there that would make it safe of doing that. I mean, the other, a side note of putting the big boats out there would be that they just like street narrowing, it would slow traffic down if you made it really small. Which is a point that with street narrowing, it slows traffic down. It makes it harder to drive when you're going down Las Olas if you bring it in tighter, doing that. Same thing with this area, the tighter that you make anything, the harder it is to drive it, the harder it is to navigate it. And that's the concern, is that especially because we're also looking at another waiver for the opposite bank of the canal. If we had two 95-foot boats in there, then we're, just over 100 feet of navigable water in the center. And everybody in the area seems to be wanting to do that as well. From where the Coral Castle was on down, it's an avalanche of requests to put in perpendicular boats, in this area. And I looked at some of the letters of approval, in the neighborhood, and there are also neighbors that are just to the west of here, which if they're okay with doing this, they're not doing it and saying, well, I'm not gonna do it, but you can do it. They also may wanna do it too, because it increases the value of their property. So, any of these things increase the value of these properties by being able to rent the space of a 95-foot yacht is not cheap. So you can have a lot of money, coming in from the income from that. So, I don't want to be one to, downplay, your property rights. You should be able to do it. But there's also property rights of the boatyards, marinas, other people up the river, as well. And, when you buy a 50 or 100-foot wide, property and expect to put a much larger boat than what the property is, especially for commercial reasons, and I understand that that's not what this applicant's intention is. However, this property can be sold, as well. And just like on, this area is much different from Northeast 20th Avenue, which this board was in favor of granting those waivers. So there's some boats there that are 150 feet, or so, that are there maxed out. But that is the Middle River in the traffic is really, really minimal there. It's the end of a water skiing area, and then there's small boats that go underneath Sunrise Bridge. Here, it's not that way. This is an important holding area as well as a passing area for boats. So one of the ideas that marine industries that has been floating around is for enforcement if the rule was in certain areas, because the river changes width. As you can see here, there's skinny parts, wide parts, and where's the channel? Is it on the north side or the south side? So the channel's location changes, the width changes, so having the same exact rule for the code probably ought to change too, as far as in zones. I lost my train of thought. But the
One size fits all.
yeah, the one size fits all, idea, but the way of having enforcement, could be that if boats in this area were not allowed to stick out beyond the pilings, the thing, then it would make enforcement actually simple. You wouldn't have to have a laser measurer to figure out how wide the canal is and do some math to figure out what's allowed to be there and tag somebody. But if the pilings were at the maximum allowable for the boat can't stick out beyond. Easy for them to do. So for what we're doing, enforcement is an issue, and it's one of the reasons for thinking of a pause, is so that the commission actually and the public and property owners as well as boatyards and everybody could have input on what should it be, because this is, like I said, an avalanche of requests that we're getting, and we're overwhelmed by what it is. And the big fear, as well as, and you'll see in a video that we're going to play, is Little Florida, and it's there. It's very easy for that to shut down the boatyards. So putting docks and maxing out, going 30% on either side of where Little Florida is, essentially stops the flow of boats on the river. Doing that, and they're allowed to do that, right now. So anyway, enough of my speech.
I don't disagree with.
Yeah.
May I?
Please, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything you said. The whole idea of putting a 95-foot boat out there, though, first of all, if the city wants to limit the boat sizes and not have it a one size fits all, that sounds like a great solution. Putting a 95-foot boat out there on 50-foot pilings, or even the existing 38-foot pilings, it's not going to make much of a difference. If you could put it on a 50-foot piling, you could put it on a 38-foot piling. It's going to get damaged, probably significantly. So I would like to kind of divorce that conversation of the overall issue with how wide that channel should be with this specific request here. We got denied twice here and just came back with the exact number that this board suggested. So I know that there's a broader conversation and that may need to be addressed by the commission. But for this specific request, it was the homeowner whose boat was getting beaten. And the difference between the navigability of 38 existing versus 50 proposed, not a huge difference in navigability for that 12 feet, but a major difference in being able to tie the bow up to that additional mooring line.
Norbert, you were next.
No, I had
You were done? Okay. Brewster?
So how wide is the property? I'm not looking at the survey, because I don't understand why he wouldn't turn the boat parallel.
Multiple boat slips.
This is a boating family. There are two boats there permanently. Both of which are shown in that aerial. And during the season, they have family come down and bring the family.
Yeah, because I've
the Santa Maria, they all.
because I have 200 something feet further that way, and all my boats are turned the other way and they don't get beat up.
Where did you say those were?
Anyway, so okay, interesting. I just, yeah.
So basically, if I'm hearing you right, the family owns multiple vessels. And they would be able to put multiple vessels at the dock. So that's the purpose of burn perpendicular rather than parallel.
Right.
Okay. All right. Mr. Washington.
Okay, what's your installation process with the pile? Are you gonna push a barge and a tugboat up in there to do that?
A barge, yes.
How big is the barge?
I don't have them on the size of the barge.
Is it
There's actually a
kinda
barge
hard
there
for
right
traffic
now,
to get to there?
fully replacing the sea wall. So it'd be a similar size to what's there now.
Just wasn't in the traffic that's coming through there if you're doing work.
It's a busy area, but
We
we
tight.
gotta,
It'll be quick though.
Is it 5 feet above,
The seawall is being raised to comply with it, raised and fully replaced to comply.
I hear Dr. Gassman when you say that.
You're a good fit for
He's
this.
been well educated.
Going around,
I know a
Tyler?
few things.
any questions on your side?
No, I see his issues on here. I mean, you can see their past thing. They got a rope going around the boat from another boat on Google Maps. You can see them. The boat over here has got a rope going from here and it's going around the bow of the other boat.
Yeah.
Trying to keep them both in. I get it. Is there a way maybe to make the finger pilings longer? Because some of the ones, to the north of you guys, or I guess east of you, have a little longer finger pilings. Maybe make those longer to help you out. Is that something?
Well, they're at their limit for
We'd
the
have to
waiver.
come back to the board for
Right.
that.
That would be a whole
Yeah,
other
I mean, I don't know,
request.
maybe, you guys have come here twice, so I guess
Press is
obviously you
locked,
probably
okay?
discussed that stuff.
I'm just here requesting exactly what this
What the
board
board
told us
requested?
to request.
So I have a question for Sergeant O'Neill, and it's a little out of our normal processes, but since Sergeant's here, captive audience, we've talked about the New River. I know in the past you've done some speed calming operations off of the Intercoastal by Coral Ridge Yacht Club in that area, I believe, which is another hot point area for activity. Looking at this, what would you need from us and from Mr. Mayor and the City Commission to help you guys and have more time or more something to enforce the New River rules? Because we are seeing an increase in accidents up there. We're seeing more damage. We're seeing more requests because of that. So it's sort of snowballing because people are just blatantly breaking the law up there and
Yeah.
causing property
So
damage.
our main issue is the train bridge. Because when that goes down and it's down for 20+ minutes, if I don't have 2 officers on each side of it, it's really tough for me to do anything on that side. Because our majority of our calls are gonna be east of that, coastal or offshore. So for us to be west of the train bridge, I would need 2 and 2, and I don't always have that. So it's very hard for me to, because I can't leave one guy by himself if I can't get to him. And
Right.
patrol officer on the road is no use, he can't swim out to us. So I have to have 2 and 2, which is, I don't always have that. I have that maybe one day a week right
So,
now.
Right now, it's a manpower and budget issue, really, is what I'm hearing probably?
Yeah, I mean, I actually am.
Sorry, Dean.
I'm actually in the midst of planning and traffic calming action plan for the New River.
Okay.
To where all my guys will be there. We're gonna do it in the evening time where I think we'll get the most bang for our buck. Yeah, in that area, start like 3 to like 7 or something. We haven't hammed it all out yet. I do, and one of the things that kind of held me back is like I had a lot of new guys come in, they were in training. So my last guy should be all trained up by the end of this month, by the air show, so I'll have everybody on their boats, fully trained, and we'll be able to really do something like that. Other concern is that doing a traffic stop in the river is difficult than the intercoastal with the current. Typically when we do a traffic stop, we tie off to that boat unless it's just something really big. It's nearly impossible there. So what I'm going to try to do is get in touch with somebody who has an empty dock on each side of the train bridge, and so we can instruct the people to dock there, and the officer will be waiting for them on the dock, and the traffic stop will.
So let me ask you this, would it be helpful if we could talk with the homeowners and homeowner associations along these areas? Much like the videos that your client provided, if they had FL numbers or the vessel name in that video, could they then forward that information to you and have your office take action against those boaters or not?
We'd have to see it in person.
Yeah, that you can't, unless the officer's there, it's secondary information.
Yeah.
So that's.
Same with vehicles.
Yeah.
We have to unview the violation.
You have to do that, okay, all right, thank you for that.
Sergeant, for about half the year, we have empty docks.
What's that?
I said for about
About
half the year, we have some empty docks.
That's probably the half that there isn't that much traffic.
What'd you say?
Probably the half that is not that much traffic.
Budget.
It's the half when the
It's crazy,
family
right?
members from up north are up north.
You get one of the better, the lower deck.
We've identified a
there.
couple docks that we want to use.
All right, thank you very much for that. All right, moving back to the board on this issue. Comments, questions for the applicant from the board? Norbert?
I think the main issue that we were talking about, and actually only the commission can resolve it, and the fact is what Jimmy Harrison was saying and stuff over there. When you go for a variance, I brought pictures in to show the board where you guys got a variance and you put this obstruction out 50 feet. And there was one over there where a person says absolutely positively swore up and down, they put on the paperwork and everything else, they would not have anything other than an 85-foot boat. It's over in an area where Florida folks were allowed. And so I happened to go by there on 3 of them where I know the people swore up and down. Either the property was sold or the homeowner changed. When they made that variance and stuff changed, at one point, there's a Westport dock there. Westport of 112 feet. Now, they swore up and down they would never have anything over 85, and I already checked with the Marine Patrol and stuff over there. There is no jurisdiction on that because it never gets into the code that you can't have a bigger boat in this slip. Just like what Jimmy Harrison was saying, if you put a 95-footer in there, you can swear up and down, you won't have it. You sell the property and the next person owns it, puts a 90-footer there, and he's in the same situation. Well, I gotta put a pile out even further to protect it. The thing that I'm saying is, what I agree with what you were saying and stuff over here. If you get a variance and you put the pile out 50 feet and it's approved by this board and stuff over there, that's the maximum limit either the boat or the obstruction can be. So if that is if what you're going for is a 50-foot variance and you say, I got a 40-foot boat, 45-foot boat, you're fine. Because we wouldn't have it. But there's nothing to stop you, correct me if I'm wrong, to taking 30% of that. Even though you could say, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna do that. There's nothing to stop you from 65 or 75-foot boat, the way the code is right now.
I understand, and I just want to say, they can put a 95-foot boat out on 38-foot pilings as well.
Right.
We don't need the waiver to put a 95-foot boat out there.
Exactly.
We need a waiver to secure the 45-foot boat that's already out there.
Exactly.
So we can already do that. This application wouldn't change the ability to do that. Only the commission and the code can change the ability to do that. But we can do that already right now. That's not the purpose of this application.
We're
Discussing on the board, could we see the video that Steel Towing produced before we make a vote on this?
I have no objections. Any objections to watching our video? Okay, it's pertinent to this issue?
Yes.
Is it steel or court?
Ms. George?
Or is court?
Is it?
Anyway,
I
we're the
just-
tow boat operator.
My question was, it was brought up a couple times about changing it to a no-wake zone. What has to be done to make that happen?
That's a state.
That's a state thing.
Okay.
Yes, they need,
So
we
that
tried to do
could
this
take forever.
years ago.
It's been attempted, and as many people are for it are also against it. So
Right.
it's a troubled path that we'd be on to try to get that done. Unless it was a Coast Guard area, and then they would have issues on it. I mean, there's a whole lot of, it becomes very
Okay,
difficult.
so that would be a much more burdensome process than anything else.
Right now, yes.
Sure.
Okay,
But I wanna keep the focus on this application
Right.
with these topics. New River overall is a much broader subject to talk about, and, we need to look at that entire area as we talked about and get some ideas on how to move forward. But I do wanna make sure that we don't pile on one issue onto another issue, so we have to stay pertinent to this particular application.
Yeah, so this video shows that this property as well as the upriver and downriver.
Okay, excellent.
Pinch zones.
Ted,
Sir,
one second, so he's mentioned a couple times that the board gave him a number to come back with, is that true? Because I mean, obviously.
in the original application
Suggestion.
hearing of this question, the board asked if if the applicant under a different representation would be open to reducing their request to 50 foot. And I believe the applicant's representative said no.
Yes,
That
it
was
took
the-
a lot of
yeah.
convincing on my part, I will say, to come back with 50 feet.
And additionally, in thinking of it, I believe it was for the westernmost piling to be out 50 feet, not all of
Yeah,
it.
I have to look at the minutes to guarantee, but yeah, that's kind of where that number came from in that discussion back then. It wasn't that, yes, we would approve it, absolutely. It was, would they be willing to bring it down to that?
Okay.
All right, so who knows about this? Jimmy, you wanna
Patience,
prep
wanna
patience?
preface it?
You wanna?
Yeah.
So Patience Cohen? MISF.
Marine Industries Association of South Florida. The tug was steel, and Liberty, and the crew of Liberty actually gave us the opportunity to put, 4.5 cameras on for the whole ride up the river. They had time release on
John,
all
that
4
didn't start.
sides. And we had a drone in the air, and this is the drone shot after it goes through the bridge past Cooley's Landing and right past the area we're talking about.
Okay. No popcorn? This is a 50-meter, 164 foot.
There's boats this side nearly every day. Multiples.
Somebody wanna narrate where we are? I think most of us know, but in case.
Seventh Avenue Bridge right there,
Thank you.
approaching Cooley's Landing on the right.
Look how tight that is, look how tight that is.
Cooley's Landing boat ramp, correct?
The one thing you have to remember is there may be a boat coming downriver because they need high tide, so they're limited by when they can.
And not everybody listens to VHF.
Yes, yeah, this is, it's speeded up.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
We're about to see some boat damage.
With no weight.
That's the power lines.
Okay.
They just went under.
The property is right on the left there.
So that's your home, that's the applicant's two white boats? Two white boats.
Imagine if the 2 boats have to pass, that's where they have to pass.
Yeah, this is the only spot.
Yeah, that's the only spot you gotta pass.
And I want you to all watch closely now. Watch the stern tug.
How many times they hit?
This is going to be more important later on because we're gonna have a little conversation.
Look at this.
And that little sailboat over there.
This is treacherous.
Yes. Yes.
This is great.
This is the line of boats that are behind them on the process, so they make their own traffic jam as they go.
What time is there that's wide enough and they pass then?
It was, they had this is, the river going down in near Salt 7, and this is,
It carried me right there.
This is what these guys are 87.
Okay, yeah. Alright, so I think we saw the applicant's actual home and the site, their proposal there. Actually, the next two we saw, both properties are contiguous, so. Okay, so that kind of gives us an idea of what we're talking about, moving a big vessel through this area. Jimmy, thank you for pointing that out. I think that does help everyone kind of get an idea of how that process works if you're not part of it. All right, going back, so no additional public comment, correct? Oh, we have, okay, please come up here, state your name for the record, sir.
Cool. Justin Hewer.
Say your last name again?
Hewer, Heuer. What I'm still confused on is you're asking for the extension out on the piling. I don't understand how that, what's the intention on that? It's strictly to keep the vessel more tightly moored?
Exactly, secure the bow of the boat.
How would that work?
It's another point of contact.
The wave is still there.
Yeah, oh, I said it's not gonna stop it, it's gonna
And
mitigate
most of
it.
your action is actually the stern hitting the two docks on either side that have come out. So it's great your bow's sticking straight. The butt's still going this way. Still gonna hit the pier.
In that particular video, I can't say whether it would or not.
And if the motivation is to arrest this movement on the stern, and keep the bow pointing straight, fantastic. You know, with an anchor, you can do with a lot of stuff. Do it with two spring lines pulling back. Your video is showing damage to your stern section. That's what you're concerned with. You got the pier right there. You got a big boat right next to it. Yeah, it's concerning. What I don't understand is this moving out is not gonna actually fix the problem that you're finding. It sounds like the problem you're finding is an enforcement problem, where you're getting weight and it's hurting the boat.
That's causing this, yes.
And further construction won't stop that weight.
The owner believes that an additional point of contact or two additional points of contact at the bow
And
will help.
And the owner went to where to get his maritime mooring training and maritime construction. Because right now, it just sounds like an opinion. And from my maritime experience, and I think there's a few other us in here, tying up your bow is not gonna do crap for your stern. It's not gonna do much.
More tightly tie that up as well.
They could, you're right. But I think the thing that maybe your owner, I understand why your owner, it's a big boat, everyone loves big boats, I love big boats, we get to fix them. Make a lot of money doing it, it's fantastic, pro big boat. The issue is, your boat's too big for your pier. It's a similar situation to a buddy of mine who went out and bought a truck, it was a fantastic truck, drove it home, found out that his garage door isn't big enough for the truck. So he parked it in the driveway. He was in violation of the HOA because you can't leave your car in the driveway. The issue is, you bought a truck that's too big for your garage. And yes, if it was a truck, you could build a bigger garage, you could do some construction to it, and that's fine, but that's on your property. This is encroaching onto public land. The other aspect is, and I think you're missing this, is yes, you could put a 90-foot boat out there, but again, you're stuck with the breath between the two fingers.
Exactly.
So you can't put a 90-foot boat out there because you're already maxed out at 40.
Exactly.
Right, so putting this piling out there is just gonna hinder traffic.
We don't see how it would hinder traffic when there's already a boat in that location.
That's taking up that space.
The tugboats are not traveling through the existing boat. The pilings are further south than the bow of the existing
So
boat.
the boat is already the obstruction, the
Exactly.
leading obstruction in navigation. So your piling is still inside of it.
Correct.
And the only thing we're really worried about is, or one of the concerns about with the new river, one of the things in the marine industry we're concerned about, is choking off the river.
Exactly.
Your piling being internally, that's not gonna be a problem, but again,
That's my point.
maybe you're gonna put a 58-foot boat in there. Maybe you'll put a 60-foot boat in there. You could put a 100-foot sailboat in there.
Again,
A 100-foot
city can-
sailboat's got the right breadth.
the city commission can restrict it if they want. That is not
They-
under the purview of this
But that's,
application.
as far as I know, that is an unenforceable law.
It's actually, I'll stop you right there because we've spoken with the assistant city attorney on this, Bob Dunkel. And if the limitation is tied to a deed restriction on the property, it is enforceable by code enforcement and is enforceable with future owners as well. So
Okay,
it is enforceable at that point. Previously, we've had issues where they're not enforceable because it's not a deed restriction. It's an agreement, and agreements aren't really super valid in 20 years. But as a deed restriction, it would be enforceable, so that concern would obviously be ameliorated in that case.
so we could put in a rule with this permit saying you must be restricted to this, or deed restriction to the property.
It's a possible solution that the board may come up with, yes, sir. So, yeah, absolutely.
But again, the boat is already higher up, so you made a good point. The boat is the obstruction. And as with the first application that was for the boat lift, the boat was already out there. Approving the lift was, the boat's already out there. The boat is the obstruction. The lift that you approved is not the obstruction. So the obstruction already exists. It's not going anywhere. All we're doing is making it safer at this point. For hurricanes, for the boat itself, the obstruction remains the same, we're just making it safer.
Now,
We have to get back to the other people, so we can't have a whole lot of
Your
back
thing.
and forth dialogue.
All right.
I appreciate your input and support. Thank you for your questions, sir. Back to the board. Norbert?
When you, obviously had contact with the city attorney, the only thing I went, who enforces that? You put it on the deed and stuff, but there's a restriction on the boat. Does he enforce it?
No, as it was explained to us, it becomes a code enforcement action. Code enforcement can act on it if a neighbor or another citizen makes a code complaint. code enforcement who has a marine unit now, they still do, correct, Sergeant? And a vessel, they can go out there, they can measure the vessel, they can measure the wet face, do a bunch of different things, and they can determine if it's actually in fact in violation to the deed restriction, and then it's a code enforceable action which goes against the property owner. So if they have another vessel there, it's not their vessel even, it's still on the property owner then, the fines or any other things that special magistrate might do or anything like that. So it becomes a code action at that point.
You just can't, you've tossed around the term deed restriction for a while, and the fact that town council may say that that's acceptable, we can't even begin to discuss the kind of language that protects us, what the restrictions are, et cetera. So to simply say, well, what if we put a deed restriction on it, there's a lot that goes into that. So I don't think we're prepared to say that any waiver is acceptable with deed restriction until we kind of see language that's acceptable to us as well as the town, so.
Well, I think that would be up to the city attorneys and city legal department to work with the applicant's attorneys and come up with acceptable language.
As to
Right.
what it should do, and then we take it.
I would be comfortable making a comment that was a restriction, because then it's up to the legal eagles, and Mr. Mayor, you're certainly included in that statement, to come up with the appropriate language, because by no means will I have the appropriate language to add to it. But I think our job here is to advise the city commission on maritime matters, and whether it's docks, waiver requests, operations, anything like that. Our expertise is in the operations side. Their expertise is in making a law or a stipulation or a resolution that could then be worded legally to cover what the impetus behind our suggestion was.
I understand the concept, but there are certain situations where we may feel that a deed restriction or whatever the language is simply doesn't have the teeth we're looking for. That's all I'm saying we should do.
Yep, it's possible. It's possible. Anything else from the board? Barry?
20th Avenue is idle speed, so it's not comparable. The angle, the weight, as was pointed out earlier, is still going to continue regardless of where the pilings are. What the picture shows that the real damage comes from is from the stern. It hits, you get a back wake when you hit the seawall, and now you're going to continue with the same. It's either understand or identify. We just want longer pilings, but the boat's still going to rock around, and you ought to be more concerned on the back wake from the. It's only 4 or 5 feet away from you. And while the mayor's here, you have to understand, Mr. Mayor, the harder we make it for these boats to go up to the yards, we'll find some other place to go, where they don't have to pay a tow. They don't need to pay a tow to go up to the Danny River. They don't need to pay to go to Palm Beach, St. Lucie. They go in there for free, right in. And you hear more and more, it's a threat, it's more a threat. That's, I think, what we're initially, this about is to protect the industry that is so important.
I think we've got an equal responsibility to look at our residents, our taxpayers there, residential, our recreational boat owners, our kayakers, and the commercial marine industry. I'm a big part of that too, you know that. It's a balancing act, and I think that's what the city commission is struggling with and is gonna struggle with. I think it's what, our enforcement agencies are struggling with, our industry is struggling with. Everything's getting bigger. Recreational boats are getting bigger, commercial boats are getting bigger, everything is just getting bigger.
The river.
The river. Thank you.
And the roads aren't getting bigger, the rivers aren't getting
So
bigger.
congestion becomes an increasing issue for us.
But size matters, it seems.
Who did we talk to?
So-
Dunkel?
Yeah.
So getting back to
I
this
gotta
issue,
go.
to
You
kind
gotta
of,
vote soon or?
we are, I'm actually asking for a motion on this issue right now, please. If we have a member of the board make a motion for, dock waiver request for 777 Southwest Sixth Street.
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay, Ms. George, Tyler, a motion to approve is been first and seconded. Let's have some discussion.
I'd offer an amendment, now or after.
Well, we've got a motion on the floor that's been seconded, so we have to vote on the motion that's here. So if the motion passes, it passes as it is. If it fails, we can make another motion with an amendment then.
Okay.
We have a motion on the table right now we have to vote on.
Okay, because I like the deed restriction idea.
It's there, but it's as presented, we've got unless the
I'm
petitioner,
happy to make that change to have the
Friendly
deed
amendment.
restriction.
a friendly
As a
amendment.
friendly amendment.
to approve subject to the board,
the deed
adding a deed
restriction.
restriction.
Tyler as a second.
Or limiting the
Deed
size.
restriction to what, like a size of, are we
Size
gonna
of
limit the
boat
size?
that's allowed.
So
Size
we're
of
gonna
boat
say
allowed, yeah.
65 foot, 40, 45 foot, what are we?
Second withdrawal and
Well,
then.
you don't wanna go past, you wanna restrict it to the length of the couple of times.
Wait a minute, what, are we gonna define what that restriction is, or are we just gonna leave it up to commission?
So a
Or up
deed,
to the commission.
deed restriction
For a max of
to the
55 foot
max
vessel.
of,
Do you wanna give that as an idea?
How long is the owner's boat now?
About 45.
You could offer a condition resolution incorporating whatever legal tools are required to limit the vessel to 55 feet or whatever you want to say.
so we wouldn't have to pick a number.
You don't have to
I think
say
that
deed
55
restrictions.
is-
Well, whatever the mechanism is, our legal department.
We'll look at that, yeah.
There's
So-
precedence on the other side of the
Okay.
canal for a directly across with a 50
So
foot boat.
we've got an amended motion and the second has amended as well. Carla, have you captured that successfully before we go to?
So we had a motion and then we had a second and then we had a discussion about adding.
Right. It's a
And the
friendly
original
amendment.
petitioner, friendly amendment to their original
It's accepted.
motion.
Okay.
Can we read the amended motion?
Please.
We have it on tape.
Or we can get the original,
It's to add a deed restriction for a maximum of 55 foot.
So I think we changed that to say that we were going to have a deed restriction based on the legal requirements as defined by commission, is
I
that?
think
I wanna make sure we have the right verbiage
Yeah, I
for our
know, I
motion
wanna
here,
make
so
sure.
let me confer with Andrew here.
a conditioned resolution requiring a restriction on the vessel length of whatever feet, using whatever legal tool
Well, first of all, the motion is to allow.
To approve.
To approve
To approve,
the installation up to 50 feet, right?
Correct.
That's the motion. And the friendly amendment as accepted by the seconder also, that that there be some type of restriction to require it not to exceed, a boat not to exceed 55 feet.
So this is a stipulation, how is it received by you, just with that type of language as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the only lawyer on the commission, so.
No, but to come up to you with the same language that we're
Yeah,
discussing.
well, I'd leave it to our legal staff
Yes.
who are more tutored in this vocabulary.
Bob Dunkel would be instrumental in that.
Yeah, Bob
Assistant
is-
city attorney,
Bob's
he's got a lot of experience,
He's
so.
still hanging in there.
Alright, so we're happy with that, we're happy with the conditional resolution language. First and second, I think we've worked out the friendly amendment. We'll do it by a roll call vote, please, Ms. Carlin.
Mr. Whitten,
I was hoping it was April 1st, just because Andrew has been so patient with this whole process, I approve.
Okay.
Mr. Flanagan.
No.
Mr. McLaughlin,
No.
Mr. Harrison.
No.
Mr. Brunel,
Yes.
Mr. Franks,
No.
Mr. Boyer,
Yes.
Mr. Knott.
No.
I'm sorry, no. Miss George,
yes.
Mr. Washington.
No.
Mr. Repulse.
Not here.
Oh, that's right. And Chair Morley.
Yes.
That's a tie.
Well, it's just an advisory opinion that's submitted to the commission.
Yep.
With a vote of 5, what is it, 5 to 5?
6 to
6 to 6.
6.
6 to 6.
6 to 5.
6 to 5? Yeah. Oh, 6 to 5. Against?
Sure. Yeses.
So it fails.
It
6.
fails. 6 to 5. Okay. Alright, that motion fails on dock waiver request for 777 Southwest Sixth Street. Okay, moving on to dock waiver request for 801 Southwest Sixth Street. Mr. Shine, once again. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your evening. I appreciate you, sir.
I appreciate it.
Your time is our time. We appreciate you, sir, very much. Thank you for your service to the city. Mr. Shine, do you want to,
I'll make it easy on everyone, it's the same statement of facts for 801.
Any questions specific to 801 Southwest Sixth Street on this application? Okay, any public comment on this?
Can I ask something?
Sergeant, please.
So what I've been doing lately, when I get the notice of what's gonna be under, I've been going out and checking the properties and seeing kind of like first-hand view of what's what on the property. I don't know, I know you're not the owner of the property. The two sailboats on that little canal, does the property owner own those sailboats?
There's a catamaran
That's a
that's
Dartmouth
not
River.
next to this property, it's next to the one to the west.
Next to the empty lot, the canal that
Yeah.
runs in?
That's not part of this
They're trying-
property, the
they're
property
obviously trying to do whatever they. Okay, it's not part of, okay.
No.
He owns it, correct? That's the sergeant. So he owns the lot and the
Yes,
vessels?
he owns the catamaran, but yes, it's not part of this application.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had a good question about those boats, but.
You wanna air him on the record, or?
Well, I didn't know, because when I went out there, the boats seemed to be in a at-risk.
Tyler?
The vessels seem to be in an at-risk state, I think bordering on maybe derelict to me. They look like they haven't moved in a long time with the growth on the bottom. I'd be suspect to know if they had any propulsion.
Yeah, it's working.
Steerage, the two small sailboats?
No,
The one named,
all I know about is this
Spindrift?
catamaran right here.
Okay, there's, on that little canal,
Here,
yeah, that canal, kind of to that same property.
That's Tarpon River.
Right, yeah. There's two sailboats, there's a center console catamaran, there's also a boat on a lift.
I can check, I do not believe those are my comments, but I'll check with it.
It's on the property, so they're kind of to the property.
So your concerns that those vessels appear derelict or in danger of
They're
sinking?
I would say they're at risk without
At risk.
knowing the mechanical abilities of them. So I'm just curious about.
It would be
that.
very unlike him to have derelict vehicles, but I will check.
I mean, they obviously haven't moved in a while, cause they probably couldn't move, because it has a Great Barrier Reef on the bottom of the beach. So they probably have, they're small sailboats, they probably have a very hard time moving out of there, so. I'll inquire with him about it, so I'll go back and have one of my guys inquire about it.
Okay. Any discussion from the public on 801 Southwest Sixth Street, additional? I think the same concerns and the same ideas exist for both properties. Back to the board, any discussion, questions, queries for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, we'll close comment period, and I'll ask for a motion on item 9, 801 Southwest Sixth Street, Dock River request. Do we have a motion? Motion to approve. Steve Whitten, motion to approve. Do I have a second? Michael Boyer, second. Once again, we may have a roll call vote on this issue,
Absolutely.
since there's no more discussion.
Mr. Whitten.
Approved.
Mr. Flanagan.
Barry.
Are you a yes or a no,
No.
Barry?
Drawing a blank on the same.
It's the same.
It's the
It's
same
the adjacent property, so it's the one immediately to the west, correct?
The daughter or whatever.
The same file, yeah. No.
Mr. McLaughlin.
No.
Mr. Harrison.
No.
Mr. Brunel.
Yes.
Mr. Franks.
No.
Mr. Boyer.
Yes.
Mr. Knott.
No.
Miss George.
Yes.
Mr. Washington.
No.
And Chair Morley.
Yes.
5 yeses.
6 no's.
Yeah.
Motion fails. Okay. Mr. Shine?
Thank you.
Thank you again for your time.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you very much. All right. Whew. Moving on to item 10 on our agenda, our discussion with code enforcement marine issues. Do we have a code enforcement representative here, Sergeant, to discuss? Do we know?
Not that I see.
So they were invited.
They were invited.
And they indicated that they were
And they
coming.
accepted.
And I asked them again.
That's against
and,
code.
So we could cite them.
Failure to appear.
Yeah.
Don't they know it's my last chance to ask them a question?
Maybe that's why they didn't show up.
Hey, I'm the easy one, I'm the pussycat. All right, so since code enforcement is not here, we cannot have a conversation about those issues because we're just talking amongst ourselves with it. Almost. So item 11, we're gonna open up to old and new business. Are there any issues or comments for old business to discuss first from the board? Mr. Franks?
Yeah, this is about the regulated navigation areas, we're considering. Just wanna pass these around. This is what's, the code here for Miami, for the Miami River. And it's not that, complicated, but it's, something that's, oh, okay, I got it, yeah. Okay, what Miami has done, or the Coast Guard in Miami, they basically, if you look down to, number 4, it says a minimum channel width of 65 feet shall be maintained at all times in the Miami River. It goes on and on. Basically, what would be smart for us to do is in the new river designate, what is the channel? Now, obviously, it's gonna be kind of hard where you have wide areas, narrow areas, but we need to have some sort of a stated width or designated channel that docks and boats can't encroach on. We need to basically codify that. Like I say, you can get an idea of what it says right here in how Miami has it. But recommendation would be for the city commission to approve appointment of a committee to review the issues related to safe navigation on the river. Pause for 1 year dock waivers on the new river, review current dockage ordinances, and pursue having the new river designated as a regulated navigation area by the USCG. This regulated navigation area will designate a minimum channel width, vessel passing zones, to ensure safe passage of vessels, all commercial and recreation vessels. So basically, we need to state, okay, where's the channel, where are our passing areas, and codify that somehow. But just recommend that the city commission approve some sort of a committee. I don't know if it would be the MIA or consultants, but we want to bring in people that are involved in the river. We want to bring in the homeowners. We want to bring in the commercial operators. We want to bring in the guys on the little tiki boats. We want to bring in, of course, obviously the city, the county, and whoever to say, hey, we're all stakeholders and this is what we think, how this should be organized. So that's my.
Before we open up discussion on that, when we look at making a motion to the city commission that includes the idea of standing up a committee, there's some sunshine law issues we've got to come to terms with.
Right.
If you look at our charter in section 84, I think it is, it actually discusses those very things as a function of this current standing committee right now for MAB. This would be the mechanism, I believe at least, we would be the mechanism, or you would be the mechanism to carry that forward, and public comment could be made here in this setting. Again, because of sunshine laws, we have to be very careful. I want to make sure that any recommendation we make to the city commission is when it's actually actionable and within the parameters of the law and the parameters of our charter. So, Andrew, as our staff representative, what's your thoughts on that?
I know that there was some conversations at the city manager level regarding, and I believe Phil from Marine Industries was involved. So there have been some initial conversations about just that. And Jimmy, you may know more about it than me, so.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
The,
Do you want to expand on that, and then we'll get to?
I can expand on some, actually myself, and anyway, worked on, that's some details that you just had in what your communication would be. I also pre-wrote one kind of more general and also giving more of the power to the commission to decide. In light of, to state the reason, in light of several past, current, and potential waiver requests for mooring piles extending beyond code distance to allow for perpendicular docking of vessels into the new river, which have the potential to impede navigational safety of larger vessels transiting the new river. The Marine Advisory Board, this is a letter, but it's all open to editing. The Marine Advisory Board requests that the Commission issue a suspension of issuing waivers or extensions of moorings beyond code on the New River corridor until the Commission can add the issue to their conference agenda and or hold a public workshop. So just vague of whatever the mechanism is.
Right.
And then lastly, the goal is to discuss the issue, find a balance that thoughtfully allows property owners maximize use of their property while taking into consideration the specific and varied conditions on the new river and facilitating the safe navigation to the commercial businesses further west on the river. There was kind of incorporating, putting that into our commission, that we want everybody, you know, to have a say in it. And obviously, we're conflicted about it. It's a conflicting issue with the way that the code is. It's not clear, and it gets contentious or uncomfortable as far as in trying to, for us to dissect it. It's something that I think that if we do this, at least it just brings it like, hey, here's what the code is the code still valid and good with the way that what the things, the issues we have going on now, and talk about it, you know, things. So, but more of, instead of us really drilling into kind of here's what we recommend and do, it's like, just let's talk about it. Then we can talk, we can, any of us can go to a meeting, we can go to the conference agenda. But conference agenda, they don't have to take a vote, you know, on, which is the different part of the regular commission meeting, the pre-meeting. And or hold a public workshop, you know, on it, of which anyone would be notified and everyone can talk, you know, at that. And just kind of see where it goes. And, you know, the idea of, because originally we were thinking, you know, 6 months or a year or, you know, whatever of a thing, and even using the word moratorium. But really, it's just a pause, you know, of doing it until we can, like, let's talk about it. You know, let's talk about it instead of dealing with one at a time and picking it off. But anyway, that was my short one.
All right, so
It was
we
great, very well done.
Didn't,
Eric?
I thought the attorney suggested we put request a year into the.
But it's just telling them until we can do this, until we can have discussions, you know, about it. And the commission can decide, okay, no, we're done with discussions, you know, here it is. So
I think the commission.
Especially with the timing, because the commission, if this doesn't get in front of them until late this month or early next month, then they've got their holiday is coming up pretty soon.
Right.
They could say, okay, we're really not gonna be able to do anything till September. So,
Well,
if we put a year, that would all of a sudden, we've lost 5 months.
You have a lot of time. You know, the commission has indicated to us that they want to have a joint meeting, and this is one of the topics of discussion we're going to be having. I think, you know, Mr. Mayor certainly discussed it tonight and was pretty clear that this is a major agenda item for them. They realize that times have changed, things on the river have changed, vessels are getting bigger, industry's getting bigger, industry's getting busier, homeowners are buying bigger boats. As we see a reduction in marinas on the New River, we're seeing an increase in rental dock activity, which is bringing forth a whole other side of you know, of conversation to come into it. So it's not gonna be resolved anytime soon. So I think, you know, Jimmy, I think that language, I think it's really good. And both you and Bob, I think, have come up with some really good points here that I think kind of capture what we're trying to do. And I think you're both saying the exact same thing, albeit the public workshop and conference, from a language standpoint, I like better because that's easier to recommend than setting up a committee, because that it gets into a little bit of sticky territory if we do that. You know, our area is to recommend, you know, and study and recommend to the city commission. They can say yep, they can say nope. It's up to them. But I think we've kind of beat this issue a lot, and I think that's pretty much capturing almost all of it that I can think of. Tyler?
Going back to what you sent last month as far as like what our job is here to do.
Yep.
Right? We are that committee.
We are.
We are the ones who are trying to make a decision to help out, whether it is regulate from the middle or not, to the city commission to tell them this is what we're approving. It goes back to what you were asking too. What are we deciding on as a goal or a like blanket policy on like how we approve docks? If we do something different for the Middle River, maybe we come up with a somewhat of a blanket policy in the New River that this is what we'll approve and this is what we won't, because it goes beyond the middle of the channel and we don't wanna do that. You know what I mean, like that to me, we need to have almost a discussion for an hour and a half about this and sit down together and hash out, these are my ideas, take a friggin' week or two off, come back again and have these, if we're gonna make these decisions, I get scared of having the Coast Guard own that river, you know what I mean, and just designate, cause that just means they can go further. You know what I mean, that's a little bit
There is a
scary about that.
There is a past recommendation from Fine, I believe, of a 100-foot channel. Something like that on the New River.
What's the average of these little, like in between these two bridges and like more east? What's the average of that? Because that's not 100 foot, right? I mean,
It just varies
changes.
drastically.
right, but if we go 100-foot channel, then these boats that are already there have to be taken away.
Exactly, and
Because-
that's the problem,
And
is
you can't
putting a
just blanket
number
it all
on
the way
it.
down,
Right.
because if we did that, this guy we just denied, there should be no problem for denying his thing right here. He didn't break any of the 100-foot channel.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So like that's my goal is if we're gonna do that stuff, we need to come up with it and actually come up with something that's legit. What maybe, and you tell me that boat that just got pulled through there needs more than 100 feet. It took up the whole damn thing. You know what I mean? Like it's a 150-foot boat itself. When it turns, it needs at least probably 100 foot to do it any kind of access turn. So
I think as experienced as the members of this board are, and there's a lot of knowledge here, I look around the table and, you know, there's centuries of knowledge here, to be honest with you. It's pretty amazing, the experience levels. We're still not enough. So I think the idea of having more public input, having some public workshops and those things, I think brings in a lot of value to that. So I think, Jimmy, you're on point with that recommendation in a big way. I think that communication is certainly headed in the right direction. I know there's some members of the public that want to talk about this as well. So if it's okay with the board, I'm gonna open up the conversation to the public now. And again, ask you if you want to speak, just identify yourself for the record and discuss. Patience?
Patience Pond Marine Industries Association. When I arrived at the meeting today, I got an email, and I'm going to read it to you because I want you to tell me what to do about it. And you may want to bring up the video again so you have a better idea of what I'm talking about.
We can, it's,
We remember.
you know, it's Little Florida.
Yeah, Little Florida, yes. But I want to be able to point out what the problem is. Now, this may be a case of Billy Goat Gruff.
Everybody knows what that is.
Talking about centuries of knowledge.
I was just gonna say, like, wow.
Careful.
The contractor, contacted the person that sent me this email, who's working on our seawalls. He was contacted yesterday by the owners of Little Florida about installing new seawalls all the way around the property, which extend about 3 feet beyond the existing seawall. The biggest issue, he said, is it's also planning to put a 25-foot observation platform sticking out at the point of the property. I don't have any further details, but I do have a picture.
25 foot, a square.
And it's already permitted.
holy shit. Which is wow legal, right?
It's legal.
Following
Totally,
our-
right. It's within the code.
It's within code, oh wow.
So now what are we gonna do?
Yeah.
I think that's a different communication of commission, I think.
That's already
Same thing
permitted.
and more.
I mean, it's a separate, almost.
This is the uncaged animal that we were concerned about.
Yeah, that's what you were saying.
Yeah.
Maybe it
By
was
right,
like
by
big
right.
mount that made him think of it, yeah.
Now, there are things called hazards to navigation. And that's something that can be put forward if we feel this is a hazard to navigation. We can have two communications to the commission.
It's a hazard.
What's the purpose of that thing? What do you
It's
say?
an observation platform, as it's stated. They just wanna go out there
That's why I
and
said
To watch all the boats go around the
Which,
ground.
I kinda think the whole
Smashing the
peninsula
boats
is a
on the
big
outside.
observation platform.
And what's the need to go out though with just that? I mean, it's not a dock, right? It's something
It is a
out of.
It is a dock.
Observation.
Okay.
You can't tie up to it, but it's an observation.
You
It's
can't,
like
you
a
can't tie
50-foot
overnight. You can't tie
Piling
overnight.
doesn't let a 100-foot boat get in there, but sometimes it happens.
It wouldn't take much to take it out.
I
I mean, not for nothing, look at some of the barges going up there.
There's some heavy rocks right on that north side of that thing too, because he said, I know I had to get over there one time where it tore up some prop over there one time, trying to lay over there a little bit with a barge on that, where it makes that hook in there, there's some rocks down there, loaded in through this area here. And there's also rocks that are all along in here. I said, but I hit something there, and hit something over here, somewhere down in this area here.
Didn't there used to be a marker going past Little Florida?
There's a marker that's like, I know there's a marker at the river like right over here.
Yeah, I remember something.
I'm not sure about there.
It's an interesting issue, and when I talk about being taken out, it's a real concern. Anytime we put things into the river that stick out, whether they're legal or not, does it raise the point of having a navigational concern for the safety of navigation going through there? It certainly does.
Do we know an average of how many boats that are that size go up the river every day or every week, or do we know, have any idea? Is it 10 a month?
Coast Guard estimates 5,000 vessels in total, 85,000 vessels a month are transiting in that
I'm
area.
more specific, being ones that are like being towed.
On that
like
size,
Like, is
Jimmy,
it 10 a month? Is it-
MASF,
Very.
Barry, you might know.
Depends on the time of year.
I have a.
Go to Laura.
Hang on. Member of the public?
I can say there's been at least 7 this week,
This
in
week,
my 1 yard.
over 50 meters.
Oh, yeah.
7 this week, just to your 1
My
yard.
yard, and it's a slow week. On a fast week, we're normally raising and lowering 3 boats a day, right, Bob?
Yeah.
So 3 boats up and down a day, so one boat comes in, one boat comes out. So we'd have, 21 boats transiting during our busy season?
That are over 50 feet.
Yeah.
A week.
Over 50 feet.
Oh, I mean 50 meters, over
Yeah.
50 meters a week.
Oh, 150 meters?
No, over 50 meters a week. You have
Sorry, after
21 a
50
week.
meters.
They come up that river that are specifically to you, that are over 50 meters.
No, not to me, because they can't pass under the bridge, but someone at LMC is averaging about the same.
Okay.
Patience, do you have any data from
The daily
MASF?
average is for under tow is 5.
5 a day.
Daily average, over 50 meters, under
Well,
tow,
the
Under
what's
tow,
under
yeah,
tow.
so,
under tow, okay.
So that's 125.
yeah, pretty much.
My son went up there.
Or my boat
yesterday at
broke
5
down.
in the morning.
Which happens Sundays.
Well,
Yeah,
from what you talked about, that observation deck, you said that has been permitted?
So I'm told.
Can we send a communication to the commission and request that be reviewed by the commission?
I think the dilemma is right now, with due respect to patients, this is hearsay.
Well,
So we
but
have,
it's been
there's been,
permitted.
no, I understand.
I
But-
sent the plans to Andrew. and
So I
Brian.
think what we're all agreeing to is we're simply asking that the commission be aware of it. But I'm not even sure this makes its way to the commission,
I was
if you
just
simply
gonna say,
need
I
to
don't
pull a
think it
building
does.
permit. So I'm not sure
So we have
who
a
the
level 2, I
person
believe.
is.
I have a meeting with Anthony Barnard tomorrow.
That's,
Yeah. So our communication that we're proposing to the commission deals with waivers. We have not discussed any changes to the existing code. This observation platform falls within the existing code. I don't believe it even requires a level 2 review, or it's a straight, within the code, within the allowances, here you go.
It's a dock.
Right, so it's, it wouldn't even elevate
So.
past the initial plan review.
But I do think that with, in the communication, we don't
Yeah.
need to go into changes of
No.
code, but that would be something that we would talk about, obviously,
During the meeting,
during the meeting.
It's a concern on both sides, obviously, yeah, absolutely. Norbert, you're next.
One of the things that the information that I have that book and you gave that information, if we designate something is a hazard, we have jurisdiction to look into that. In other words, according to what you're saying over there, so if it's a hazard to navigation, even though it's permitted or within the 25 feet, we would have, according to what I read in the book and stuff, of all the things, including, there's a whole list, actually, you put down on that book and stuff over there. And, what I'm saying is, if we have, I think there's unsafe conditions or something in here, that we, like, the operation of, operation of private owned marine, no, none of that would be. Waterway safety and traffic control of the waterways, that's the first thing that's on there, waterway safety and traffic control of the waterway. So, by putting that thing out on the tip of Little Florida would be a hazard to navigation.
Not until we know about it officially though.
It certainly is, and I would think the marine industry folks that go up and down the river would could carry forth their complaints and their concerns as well. And you are, yeah, obviously. So there's a lot of mechanisms to get the city commission and building department aware of the concerns from industry. Without us having to make a litany of every single thing, we have to be aware of it, we have to be involved in it. And as you guys move forward, I keep saying you guys because as you know, tonight marks the end of my term. And I'm timing out after 6 years. So I'll become a member of the public in our next discussion. And you guys will be electing a new chair and vice chair. But this issue is not gonna go away. And I encourage you guys, and I use that term collectively, Ms. George, you're certainly one of the guys now.
I am one of them.
Is there-
I'm an
is there-
engineer, I am a guy.
Is there
In
any
that
way that
respect.
we can find out, like, I realize that not every dock that gets permitted and not every seawall gets permitted, especially now where they're raising all the seawalls and everything else and stuff on it. But, is there any way that we can get any kind of, like a general notice that we could scan through and say, wait a minute, this one looks funny here, the one that we say on there, do we have any of that, do we have that, any kind of information on that? No.
That's.
So in other words, that just goes, if I wanna build a dock and it's within those limitations, all I have to do is go get it permitted, right?
You could
So I get a
you could look up
contractor and
the
they go permit
property
and everything else
and
and
see if
stuff
they
like
have a
that.
permit application.
So I don't have any idea of, you know, like they could actually skirt the entire little Florida
could.
stuff over there 25 feet. stuff over there.
There's legally nothing stopping that property owner from doing exactly that
What,
within the
what
current
would,
code.
what would be the recourse, understanding that we have the safety and hazards, what would be our recourse if we found out, like what patients found out and stuff over there, to have that, recalled? Do we have any recourse to do that?
I don't believe we do.
The board does not, but patient says that they're speaking with the assistant city manager tomorrow
Yeah.
about this issue.
Yeah,
It just came up, I mean,
I was
I-
sitting
yeah,
here when I found
yeah.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I really
I
think
already
that
had a meeting with Anthony.
that this speaks to that, you know, when we do, you know, assuming from the, that we get to go to the agenda meeting or to the meeting with the commission and or have a workshop with the commission, this is of course what we're gonna, you know, be talking about, would be the, you know, what are the ideas of how do we stop something like this from happening, you know, and is it something, you know, to have it blanket on the river, because someone else might, you know, easily be able to have a 25-foot observation platform and it'd be fine, you know, doing that.
Well, this
But it
isn't just an
depends on
issue
the
for
spot.
big yachts either. This is an issue for, you're looking at, you know, kayakers, you're looking at small vessels. It's forcing everyone to go further out
Yeah.
into the turn there,
Mhm.
which is increases the likelihood of having injuries, accidents, and fatalities along that zone.
Yeah,
It
so
really
it's-
does, because that's a blank corner.
So it's
You know,
just
if you
more of
get
the reason why they should listen and say, yeah, we'll do that.
Just imagine a kayaker or a group of subs having to go out and around there 25, 30, 40 feet further out while a vessel's coming honking around the corner.
Mhm.
I mean, it just,
Even a double.
you know, Sergeant O'Neill, I shudder to think how many calls you get for things like that. It's creating an issue.
You wouldn't see that boat going up the river.
Probably not.
So how many are in that category?
Yeah. Well,
Go somewhere else.
5 a day apparently, at minimum. So we had discussed that last meeting, coming up with a recommended verbiage for a commission, communication to the commission. And all of you guys have been working on this. I think Jimmy has come up with the most,
Add to that from there.
kind of succinct, you know, start here.
So see if there's anything.
Yeah, and Bob, I know you've got some things you've worked on, so if we can kind of merge those two together and get one document that we as a board can agree on, we can actually initiate that as a communication to the commission tonight.
I think the good news is that, I mean, first of all, we should make it clear in the minutes. So kudos to the mayor for coming.
Absolutely.
I mean, we could not have accomplished any type of memos, et cetera, what he perceived here. So to some extent, we're gonna be preaching to the choir. He is certainly aligned with this, and I think that the introduction to the rest of the commissioners will be very helpful. But I think that we've got a team that is really moving in the same direction, so I'd say it's very positive.
I believe so too. You know, when we look at the New River, we look at it, again, from the standpoint of recreational boaters, property owners, commercial operators, the boatyards to the west, sups, kayaks. I mean, it's a pretty diverse type of boats that go up and down the New River every single day. And it's challenging. It's been called one of the most challenging waterways in the country, and it's only gonna get worse. And we've got a, you know, what I would call an overworked Marine force. It's certainly, you know, they're being stretched to their limits with, you know, with the shifts that they have. It's a lot of work they've got to do to keep us safe and respond to calls, be able to respond to calls. So I think we have to be sure that we support their efforts as well, you know.
Like, this is such a perfect illustration of why there should not be a uniform code. I mean, it just doesn't apply, and there are a number of spots like this, so I think there's a lot of positive things that are coming out of this conversation.
Bob, I see you whittling away and nodding and shaking, and
Yeah.
what are you
Well,
thinking?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is we can say a lot and put a lot of things on paper. I think one thing is to present the issue and then that call to action.
Yep.
Okay, so I think there's a lot here if we can just make a statement and a call to action.
Yep.
That's what it is. And then we're looking at the issue of safe navigation on the river. We're looking at consideration for the uses for all the stakeholders, and just bringing in people, saying, all right, how do we manage this properly?
Yep.
We do need to look at the ordinances. I've got a whole lot of things I could talk about the code, but I don't wanna bore everybody tonight. But there's a lot of issues with the code about, you know, a lot of things are measured, but that's a whole nother discussion. But basically, get something in front of the commission and a call to action.
Do you feel that the verbiage that Jimmy's got there is sufficient to state our case succinctly and have a call to action?
Yeah, I believe so, as a matter of just getting, because you have, blah, 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 blah. No, I mean, I think it's fine, I would write it a little bit different, but that's, you know, just style.
Tomato at some point, right?
Yeah, it's just a style difference.
Is there also the value that is almost the second this goes out to the commission, that each of us reaches out to our commissioner that brought us here as a, you know, to re-emphasize what this is trying to do, so that they understand it, because I think that having been at Tuesday's commission meeting, there are some commissioners on topics that get it, and there are some that are not necessarily even aware of what's going on in the city.
If their district isn't along the river, it's hard for them to have firsthand knowledge of it.
Right.
And I think it's important for those of you that were appointed by the commissioners to speak directly to your commissioner and voice your opinion and concerns. That's kind of why they appointed us,
Right,
to be honest.
exactly.
I was fortunate to be appointed by the mayor himself, so I'll be doing that as well. And as a member of the public, I'll be right there with you, speaking my ideas. Just got to raise my hand next time. And I lose my good seat. Uh-huh. So Jimmy, do you want to take point on kind of merging those three documents and getting a language that you think is, because again, as succinctly as possible, I've been told, is the way to get communications through the commission without being too verbose on them. But we got to get our point across on this. This is a serious issue, probably the most serious issue this board will take up. It's been taken up in the past and it's been kind of dropped because there's been no action available. I think it's reached a tipping point. I believe, Steve, you mentioned that. That was your phrase, tipping point.
There's no turning back from this. Are you looking for language right now?
Yes, tonight. I think it's important that we get a communication.
It's just hard to regulate.
Out tonight.
I do think that that I captured the spirit of all of this in this.
Okay.
And so all of this falls within there.
Right.
And this is the detail. I think that keeping it simple, number one, is that if you look at the path, what the commissioners read, it's a lot. And it's like, try and read through what they're doing, I'm like,
Right.
I'm not reading all that. And so the shorter and sweeter that it is, I think is thing, and I think that I would count on Dean to champion this as far as with the other commissioners. And all they're not having to make any decision other than like, yeah, let's talk about it. You know, let's talk about it. And then that's what, and then we go into arm with all this, you know, at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
You want to
I
read it
didn't
then?
miss time. Yeah, I'll read it again.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this will be for the record. So after this, I'd like to have a motion to actually accept this as a communication to the commission.
You want to slow?
So,
I'll give her this.
okay.
Yeah,
All right. All right, so Jimmy, go ahead.
Can I ask one question
Sure.
before he reads that? One additional thing that I at least have seen has worked is if there's a one pager of some sort of data, numbers. They love numbers. I've been to way too many of these commission meetings, and the biggest thing that they always go, what is the problem I'm trying to solve? And what's the data behind it? So if somehow we can include some of those things of like the 5 big ships per day or something. And I don't know, or, you know,
I think that.
and the one size or a picture or something like, because a picture speaks 1,000 words, right?
We can attach the whole video. The whole video can become an exhibit.
Yeah.
It's a buzzword. I think, you know, the regular commission, again, as Jim was saying, they don't all look at it or read it, but if there's something attached to it, it'd be different.
So we can do a screenshot of this as a still and attach this, or we can attach the entire
video.
The
entire video
video,
as an
yeah,
exhibit
that's
to
awesome.
our communication.
So we did a presentation, but Norbert did a presentation, but that was previous commission, right?
Yes.
Could we also Photoshop in the after effect? So what everybody could do without their approval. So within their rights to put observation platforms and all that, we can basically show it like a survey. Where this is what it's gonna look like after everybody does what they want to do because it's within their property rights to do so. Because I think the before is great, but if you don't know the river and you don't know what goes on there all the time, then
Just
you could lose it.
superimpose the
But
walkway right
impose
there.
impose what happens next, the same way the surveyors have been showing what that plan looks like before versus what it looks like after. But show it. So it's like, okay, this is now, but this is what's allowed.
So on like this picture, if you
Yeah.
showed what
Throw
could be allowed.
that 50 feet or that whatever that was gonna be.
So Brewster, I did think of that, and it's a lot harder to do than it is to think of the idea. Is where do you get the map? You know, doing it, because you could just draw a line, you know, along it, this is what the thing is,
So,
and this is how small it makes it.
What we can do then is I think we can attach the video as an
I couldn't
exhibit
figure out how to do
and the
it.
plan of this proposed observation deck as an exhibit to this communication as a concern. So they'll see the video and this plan as to why this is such a potentially difficult issue. You know, for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think the disclosure is that it's not to scale, like it's not necessarily like.
Yeah, but the
to
plan
the
would be the
exact
actual
minute,
plan,
but-
I mean, an
The
actual
plan would be
thing.
exact.
Yeah.
And if
You're
you're
not gonna
submitting it,
discuss it,
I
because
again,
I
I
agree
will show
with it.
where
It's
it
just
lies.
It'll be an attachment, and then when at the 2nd of May,
Oh, no, I
Most
don't,
likely.
I don't have the date, it's probably gonna be the second commission meeting
In
in
May.
May, I just don't know what this.
so at that time, when it's, because they ask, one of the first things they ask at commission meetings, are there any communications from our boards? At that point, it's important that someone from the board, and depending on my schedule, I'll be off the board by then, obviously, but I will come as a member of the public and speak to this issue.
Yeah.
But it's important that the chair that's voted in, either pro tem or permanent, is there to actually expound upon it. So either, you know, the author or Steve or someone from this board's gotta be there. And as a member of the public, I can get up and speak too, you know, to this issue. We have to explain it to them because, again, we have commissioners that are great public servants, but they may not be well versed in the operations of the waterway if it's not within their district. So,
Commissioner Herbst is doing a water tour next week.
excellent, excellent. Have you had virtually all of the new commissioners then?
Pamela,
Ms. Lee.
did one about 2 months ago.
Okay.
And who else might, Warren has, we haven't been able to schedule one.
Okay. All right, well, the more you guys can support on that, the better. I think that's a great thing. It's again, it's a picture's worth 1,000 words. And until you've written it, it's really hard to imagine. So, where are we at, Jimmy?
Read it? Okay.
Oh, you ready?
Yeah.
All right.
So to read it last time, okay, in light of several past, current, and potential waiver requests for mooring piles extending beyond code distance to allow for perpendicular docking of vessels into the New River, which have the potential to impede navigational safety of larger vessels transiting the New River, the Marine Advisory Board requests that the Commission issue a suspension of issuing waivers for extensions of moorings beyond code on the New River corridor until the Commission can add the issue to their conference agenda and/or hold a public workshop. The goal is to discuss the issue and find a balance that thoughtfully allows property owners maximize use of their property while taking into consideration the specific and varied conditions on the New River and facilitating the safe navigation to the commercial businesses further west on the river.
Perfect. I think that says it all.
Long sentences, yeah.
So do I have a motion to make that a communication to the commission?
Motion. Second.
We're
all
Ready?
good.
We're good.
Thank you.
Any discussion on the motion? So we have a first from Barry and a second, Ms. George, or Franks, okay. Either one, they all can admit it simultaneously.
Simultaneously.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? All right.
With attachments.
Right.
With attachment.
Yeah.
All in favor by voice vote, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to the motion? Motion carries unanimously for that to be the official communication to the commission on this issue.
I want to get a copy of that video, how do I do that?
It's on YouTube.
Oh, it's YouTube.
That's yes, that's a YouTube video,
Okay,
correct?
very good. Yes,
Michael said.
okay.
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
oh, no,
I get it.
the plans. Michael
Okay,
said-
no problem.
I can send it.
All right, all right.
Yeah.
It's tough to hide anymore.
Tell me about it.
That's state, that's FWC.
That's a state level.
No, that's FWC. Yes.
Navigational aids are of the Coast
So,
Guard.
so FWC did a speed study on the New River and a couple of years ago, 5 years ago, and they changed some areas, but everything's the same now. But it used to be different in certain areas. So they've made it all what is slow speed.
Slow speed, minimum wake, but not no wake.
I mean, yeah, there's no reason why it shouldn't be no way, other than racing to get over that
Yeah, I mean, it'd be tough for when they're towing to be idle speed through
Yeah,
there, right?
it
I
would
mean,
be.
you're not gonna maintain your steerage.
Right.
Walls like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that, wouldn't that be something we just like.
With all the boats and stuff, you would think that the whole area should be idle.
It's beyond me, but you know.
Right,
Takes
so-
me 35 minutes, I have to idle out the.
Getting back to our agenda for the evening, is there any other old business to discuss before we move on to new business? Okay, any new business to discuss will be brought up by the board.
I just have one
Ms. George?
question for Andrew. I sent you a message about that commission topic that came up about the boat ramp access for tours. Did you end up finding anything about that?
Not yet, no.
I never saw any of the materials or.
So I can tell you that, at this point, what we're looking to do, the tours have become a real problem at the floating docks.
Right.
So what we're looking to do is set up a single dock, maybe our fuel dock area, where they can pay us and do pickups and drop-offs, as opposed to what's going on now.
Okay, this specifically was boat ramp access,
And I
so-
understand that.
Yeah.
So what's happened is some people have used the 15th Street boat ramp for that purpose.
Mhm.
That still is going on. It's not happening necessarily at Cooley's Landing anymore, but at
Okay.
15th Street, it does continue to happen.
Yeah.
So we've sent letters, John can tell you, he sent letters, the Phil Thornburg has sent, the head of Parks, has sent letters to the operators that we've photographed,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been told not to use the floating docks, and that we will be setting up a commercial dock.
Good.
But the ramps was not included in that.
And the reason I bring this up is because it actually came up at the Central Beach Alliance, that there are some of these large boats that are now pulling up to where the water taxi is by Las Solos and picking up and dropping off 60 and 70 people at a time for some of those big ones.
Wow.
And actually what we were bringing it up for is restrooms, there are no public restrooms there, and everybody's using the trees all around the area.
So if anybody can
And-
send me a picture of a specific vessel that's in violation,
I can get the name of the vessel, I
We need
forget.
photos.
yeah.
Photos.
Just photos with the
Okay.
name of the vessel, get
Okay.
as close, and let them know you're taking their picture.
The guy
Okay.
peeing?
Huh? No, the guy on the boat. Because we have to be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we got them at such and such a date and time
Okay,
and that.
All right.
And we'll get the letter to them.
okay.
Excellent,
I will,
excellent.
I'll take that extra.
Any other new business from the board?
They have all the newspapers, so they get the date.
Any input, questions, or comments from the public? Ma'am, please come up and introduce yourself, and it'd be better, because there's microphones that we have to be able to hear you and record you from. Thank you for being patient back there.
Oh, it's fine, it just came up. So
Okay,
it's
excellent.
fine.
So, name for the record?
Amanda Honor. This is my first meeting, so no worries.
Don't be nervous.
But I was
Welcome.
coming for that specific reason. So, the charter boats picking up, where are they supposed to pick up? And when is that gonna be ready? Because I know there's a lot of Wild West down here. I know there's a lot of crazy illegal charter companies out there, but there's a lot of legal ones trying to do it right. And it seems like every time they turn around, new codes are being out to prevent them from being successful. And then they have to do illegal things, but they're not trying to. So like the dock rentals behind the house. Now commercial boats aren't allowed to be renting. Okay, but I was in the yacht industry. I've never heard of a yacht getting in trouble for being behind a boat, and they are not. They're a commercial vessel, and they're not associated with criminal rent. So I'm not sure where the difference is or why the commercial boats are being targeted, but the yachts can get away with so much. And
I think, just addressing that point, we've heard this issue in the past, I think the overwhelming concern is for, as Ms. George pointed out, the amount of people that are getting off a commercial inspected passenger vessel, 60, 80, 100 people getting off. at a facility that has no sanitation facilities, and they're using neighborhood trees and bushes to relieve themselves after being on the charter, it becomes a health and hygiene issue, whereas, yes, the yachts, patios, homes is technically illegal under the current code. They're not running masses of people through these homes, they're pretty much docked there. I think it's kind of the difference. Whether it's an enforcement issue, I don't wanna even, begin to question that, because that's a whole other can of worms. But I think the issue that Ms. George pointed out was overwhelmingly about health and hygiene and public safety as a concern.
So they were using parks where there's bathrooms for people to use, but then that became illegal, so then they moved to another place, and they moved to another place, so it's like they're playing this game where like it's cat and mouse, but I'm pretty sure most of them are trying to do it legally, at least the companies that I'm aware of, and it's just like, I feel like they're trying to be small business, young entrepreneurs, and then every time they turn around, it's like the city versus them, it's like, I think that's an excellent idea to have a dock where everyone can pick up and pay. The city can make money off of it, and I'm sure the companies that are legit will pay. They don't want to do anything illegal, so that's amazing to hear, because I was coming to find out, like, where do you guys want them to pick up?
So I have a question.
Yeah.
As you call, the legitimate charter operations that you speak of, that you're aware of, where are they docked at when they're not on charter? Where's their home dock?
So they were behind houses, and now they've moved to a marina, but they're not allowed to pick up there, and another commercial area they're not allowed to pick up there. And so it changes like monthly. I don't know if you guys have talked about this before, like I'm sure you have.
Yeah, we have actually.
Sorry, that was a silly comment, but I just feel like I'm tired of hearing them have to keep like figuring it out all the time, and I'm like, can't there be a compromise where I think that's an excellent idea, where you go, you pay, you're legit, and then there's no issue. So I'm super happy to hear that that's happening. I'd love to know when it's happening.
So I guess your question is the timing of the commercial dock. Jonathan, do you have any input for that, sir?
The way that we allow charter boats to pick up at one place, which is basically what we call our fuel dock, which is aft of the musette on the south side of the river.
You call the dock master's office.
And you call and make a reservation. And you come in and you can pick up, you sign a dock agreement, you pay, you can pick up and leave, but you can't stage. So you can't come and sit there and not allow somebody else to put there. So we have to run a very tight schedule, and we've started doing this, and we have some boats that come and they pay in advance several dates ahead. And that's where we're headed with this. We have some serious impacts with these guys, like garbage. We're not equipped to handle their garbage, but they don't take it, and they're not responsible for what, even the legit guys take advantage of these. And these areas that they're landing are city parks, and there's other residents that don't wanna see people throwing up in the bushes, that don't wanna see people garbage stacked up like this from a 65-foot charter boat that comes in, a dinner boat or whatever, and that's the issue. And so all of this areas that they have been landing on are city parks, and they can't land on city parks because of a parks rule number 2.2 that says the only way they can do that is if they have an agreement with the city, which would be a concession agreement, which would have to go out for bid, kind of a thing, and it would be one. So that's the issue that the city has with it, is it's overwhelmed now. The floating docks that are on the river are given to us by recreational dollars from granting agencies. So that's why we can't let them there.
So there's restrictions to
that's
the
really
grant.
rough. So we're trying to figure something out. We have people that have come in.
The money was restricted. You can, I'm giving you money, but you have to let only recreation.
We have the illegal charters that are coming in and going into empty slips on the new river. And that's against the code because they're landing on public docks without a permit.
So Jonathan, this area by the musette, that's over the tunnel?
It's between the tunnel and the transom of Musette.
Okay, so Smokers Park, technically? Is that- Okay, all right.
Is there any parking
Now,
there?
it won't be safe. You've got all of these smaller pontoon boats. It won't work for that.
Right.
because it's not easy to get up and down.
But the large commercial vessels, right, what you're hearing is, okay.
New fuel
So,
there too.
you know, that's up to the folks that decide to come in and do it right.
I'll speak to it a little bit too, since I deal
Sergeant.
with people every day. So I think the main issue we're having right now is we've had a giant influx in these charter pontoon bachelor parties, whatever it is. If I was an entrepreneur and I was gonna start a company like that, I would probably make sure that I could land, launch, whatever it is at that. Those are public areas, they're not private. Now, if you want to come into agreement with Lauderdale Marina or Pier 66 or any of these other private marinas that, can I pick up here, can do that, and that's their private property, as long as they're meeting state statutes and codes, they could certainly do that without any issues. But these guys come in, like, they just buy a boat, and like, okay, well, and they get pissed off at the city, well, you didn't provide me a place to pick up, that's not how business works. They give you a business permit, it doesn't permit you to do your business wherever you want to do it. You know, just like a guy can't sell his hot dogs in the park without a permit or permission from the city, you can't conduct any other kind of business within the city parks. And they're not set up to do that because these guys will stage forever waiting for this crowd of a party to come in, and they're taking up a dock where a citizen or resident or whoever is coming back from fishing and he can't dock his boat now because there's 10 party boats waiting on there on the dock. So I do feel because, and the flip side of that is people, we do have a lot of tourism dollars and people come here and they wanna go on the water, and if I was coming down here, I'd wanna go on the water as well. But I don't think the city is incumbent upon them to provide a place. They're a business, they should be set up to where they know they can operate legally before they start conducting business. I can't say, you know what, I wanna sell submarines, sub sandwiches, you know what, I'm gonna use the park. And then I go in there, oh, you're not allowed to conduct business in the park. Oh, why not? Why can't I do that? That's the argument I hear all the time, and I think it's backwards. I think a lot of these companies have it backwards.
It boils
with
down
that.
to, he's right, it boils down to the business can't happen without a city park in the situation he's telling you. So therefore, the park is connected to the business. So I can't, and when they come in and they say, well, gee whiz, we're taking money off online, they're not paying us in the park, things like that. Business is a two-way street. So I'll take your money here, but I can't finish my business until I go to the park. So it's part of the business that they do, the park is integral. And it's a failed business plan, which is what it's coming out to now, because they're dependent on this.
So we're there's an area at Smokers Park.
Yep.
That through your office, Parks and Recs.
Dock master.
Dock master.
Reservations required.
Okay, that would work. And the law hasn't changed for parks, it's just being enforced, is what I'm hearing, right, Sergeant? Okay.
But I have like two thoughts on that. If like all the legit marinas are pushing people out because they want the yachts to come, and if a yacht is staging, who's gonna go to a yacht and say you need to move?
Are you talking about like a 112 Westport that takes a charter out? Or are you talking about a dinner
like
cruiser?
a little smaller than that, like these day boats that a lot of those are illegal, but they're fine to go sit at the city park because you don't know if it's a charter or the owner, so it's like no one wants to mess with them. And I don't mean to be rude, it's just like it seems like, okay, if you have a huge boat, like I don't know, the tiki boats were mentioned earlier, like you see the tiki boat, you know they're a charter, so you can easily go up and be like, you need to move. But if it's a yacht, it's like, oh, do we wanna mess with them?
Well, no, I'll tell you this, I've done plenty of charter inspection with the Coast Guard, and I can pick out a charter easy. It doesn't matter if it's a private boat, a pontoon with a big sign inside, crazy tiki.
So,
I mean, you could tell by the number of people that are on a boat, also if they have one of those floating bills on the back, 9 times out of 10 they're probably.
No, but going back to what you're saying about the larger boats, now we have a couple that we're chasing right now. That will come in and we'll have a vacant space on the wall. That one of our boats that is paying us rent is out cruising, say, or they're at the shipyard. But it's an empty space. They'll pick that spot, tell their customers to go there, and they'll just tie up across the dock. When our dock hands address them, they get finger in the chest, expletives, they pick up their people and they leave. We have I've sent him some FL numbers, they're on the lookout. So the enforcement is coming up and we will catch up with them sooner or later. It's just gonna take a little bit of time and everybody's keen on it now. The word travels very quickly. You know, we just have to be sure that, you know, you're talking about balance. You know, it's overrun, the river, you can walk across these things on the weekend. And it's dangerous.
Yeah, and unfortunately now, like the DMR is full of boats where you can go rent it and not be a captain, not have a captain, and those are the people that I see at the sandbar, just like, I don't know how to drive a boat, and then there's like the charter boat captains trying to help the people who can rent the boat, but they're legal because they're in the DMR and they're.
But what I don't understand is some of those folks depend on us to pick up their boat charters. They can't load them at Bahia Mar, but they can store them there. I don't understand that. So they depend on the city, the floating docks or the boat ramps or whatever it is to deliver their boat with their recommended captain uninspected.
So if I may, and I apologize, I'm gonna step out there for a moment.
And they got a letter, just so you know.
As just like this board took up the issue of the New River navigational concerns, might I recommend or suggest that this board take up the issue of charter operations within the city? It's within the jurisdiction of our mission, if you will. It's actually specifically mentioned in our mission. And get more public input, get more public comment from both sides. Because I think there are arguments, if you will, on both sides of it. I totally support and agree with the idea that public parks can't be used to dump off 100 people peeing in the bushes and throwing all their trash away and staggering off drunk. I also support the idea that people that have vessels, that are engaged in business, that are bringing people into the marine industry are a value asset also. There's a balancing act that's gonna get struck. And I think that balancing act needs to get input from this board, from the city, county, law enforcement, industry professionals, and members of the public that are concerned. So let's, as you guys move forward in your agendas in the future, Steve, maybe we can take this issue up and talk about this and figure out a way that we collectively, public and the board, can communicate to the commission some ideas that support the needs of the charter boats, the needs of the public, the needs of the park goers, and the needs of law enforcement to be able to enforce the laws that are on the books. And find a balancing act there. So again, it's the art of the compromise. Compromise means no one's really happy and no one's really upset. They're all kind of,
100%.
Yeah, and so like I really appreciate hearing you because I know one side, so I'm actually trying to find out like what is the intention behind it. So it's good to hear from the other side, just because when you only have one side, like it's not helpful for anyone.
I would add one more thing. Mr. Washington down there is a great example of a member of the public that came consistently to these meetings and made comments, and is now sitting at the table with some votes on it. Mr. McLaughlin here, when he was off the board, he came as a member of the public and had comments and came back to it. I would recommend that, you've got some ideas and some comments here. Keep coming to the meetings, keep being supportive of moving that agenda forward and being a voice for your side in your conversation. And help us, help you, help everyone. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was super helpful. Thank
Okay.
you.
Great, thank you very
Call
much.
us at the office.
Yeah, and call
We
John.
can walk you through everything that we're trying to accomplish.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, because it for me, even though I was nervous, a little bit, it's like talking to people is a lot easier than just like writing a letter or calling on the phone. So this was like.
Good. Well, thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate your input.
And most of these guys don't bite.
Yeah.
There's always gonna be the bandits.
All right, any other comments from the public on new business? Patience? One more?
Yeah, we have one, I thought I'd give you a heads up on the legislation that we're pushing through, and it is to require, if you get a violation, a moving violation, get out your ticket book out, you will be required to take a safe photo.
All right. Yeah, I cheer that because as we mentioned in our last meeting, along with the tremendous surge in boat ownership, has also been a surge in boating accidents and boating fatalities, 17% increase year over year for boating fatalities. Education's the key to that, guys. That's part and parcel to my life. I believe, education is the only way forward with that. So thank you for that. I think that's a great thing, and I wholeheartedly support that. Safe boating is the key to successful boating and happy boaters. We all want our families on the water.
We
If they're scared, they're not gonna go.
we are still digging our heels in on removing the exemption if you're born after 1988.
Yep.
Because I don't think Phil will ever take a test.
Ms. George?
I have a dumb question regarding the voting safety.
Okay.
Having come from Massachusetts, in Massachusetts, you had to be over 13 years old to not wear a life jacket on a boat. And here in Florida, I feel like nobody wears a life jacket. I see people with
Is
babies,
it 6 or 8?
but I see people with babies that,
It's a boat too.
It's, okay, so under 26 feet, 6 years old and under have to wear a jacket. If it's 26 feet or bigger, then nobody has to wear a life jacket.
Right.
and see, and in Massachusetts, we required everybody
Yeah.
under
Right.
that age that was on the outer
That's
parts
the-
of a
that's
boat.
state
We
law.
follow, I think.
Yeah.
That's state law.
Yeah.
I think we follow, Coast Guard law or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Our state law follows Coast Guard law.
Okay.
I
All
got
right.
a kid and I don't make him check it.
It's been a,
35-foot boat and he's.
it's been a long evening. Any other new business to talk about from the board or the
Can I say
public?
just one thing, I'm sorry.
Sergeant, please.
So most of our boats have about 4,000 hours on them, so I was actually approached by Ring Power Distributors, and they are, which is like a diesel Caterpillar, they are getting into the outboard game, so they are gonna be a distributor for Cox
Diesel
outboard
outboards.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they approached us, they want to outfit one of our boats with a couple of motors on consignment for a year.
Wow.
Because we run the, you know what, out of our boats and they want some data for that. So of course I am, and the assistant chief is in the meeting and the PD is on board with it. So I encourage you if you can to reach out to any contacts you have at City Hall, commissioners, whoever, to be in favor of that because it's like I said, free maintenance, repairs, anything for a year, and then they would offer at the end of the year for us to buy the motors at a discounted rate, which, you know.
That's a great
would
plan.
be great.
Yeah.
So
That's a great plan.
the guy literally has 150 outboards sitting in a warehouse in Jacksonville, and the CEO of the company reached out to him because he's local and said, "Get that on a police boat. They want exposure."
It's a great thing. I think that and the Coast Guard are the two key.
Yes, sir.
They're diesel.
Have they done anything with the problem that most people have, like I said with the diesels, it's the pollution factor on them?
Yeah, so
You
they
know,
are.
They have not, like, the outboards and stuff over
I
there.
think they're carb compliant.
They are EPA level 3 compliant right now, which is what their biggest horsepower they offer is 300 horsepower, and the rep told me that they could get gobs of horsepower, but to meet the emissions.
Right.
But their 300s currently meet emission level 3 of EPA.
Happy to support that effort publicly and privately. Then that's great.
So you're gonna keep them at Cox's Landing, the Cox motor?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Any other new business from the board or public? No? Okay. Before we adjourn, I just want to say thank you to all of you. Andrew, most especially, thank you for these past 6 years. It's been a heck of a journey, and I will certainly miss being part of this team. And I think it's a great crew. I think we're in the 6 years I've been on the board, this is probably, I think, the best board we've had, and certainly the most motivated that I've been part of. I know, some of you guys have history long before me. Norbert, Barry, you guys, Jimmy, you go way back. So for me, thank you very much for your ongoing dedication to the city. It means a lot to me as a citizen, and it means a lot to me as just to serve alongside you guys. And get choked up.
Well, we're not gonna let you go so quick. I mean, nobody's taking out the gold watch,
Well,
but I
like platinum.
I'll speak up just because I'm vice chairman, but I've been on this thing, I guess, 4 years, we're going into whatever we do. And I go back with Grant, I think it was a good board.
Yep.
This is a very different board. I mean, you got the history with Jimmy and Norbert and certainly Barry as a core and yourself. But the vitality of this group is very, very different. And I think the one thing we're all struggling with is how do we take a board that meets monthly to, as I said this earlier as well, to function as a business. How do we, so we don't have to draft 2 paragraphs, as we're sitting here and that was one of the points that Steve Glassman made to see if we can, again, figure out how we can communicate better. But insofar as someone that no pun intended, led the ship, you could not have done a better job. And most importantly, this is the board means a lot to me, but my friendships, particularly with you, mean a lot. And that's really what I gathered through here. So kudos to you and thank you for the job you've done.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
One of the things that I said, I'm not gonna hold you up and stuff over there, when Barry and I, years ago, we used to, look at the agenda, what we had on here, like for instance, any of these things, so we would go and visit. I know there's a couple places I ran across him once or twice and stuff, to see what some of these people were up to. That used to be fine a few years ago, and I'm going back 15 years or something like that. Now, I gotta worry about somebody shooting me, right? Because I have no identification that says that I'm from the advisory board or even from the city or anything else. And I tried like 15 years ago when I got stopped and they said, no, you're not coming in here. How do I know who you are? And I said, well, who are they gonna call? Him and find out whether or not I'm legitimate? What's the guy look like? And what I was just saying is we used to have even the parking slip, why we couldn't have some kind of identification that is given to us so that if I go approach and I wanna look at one of these properties to see what the guy is up to, whether the lift should be put in there or whether there's a reason that I could walk up to and show him identification.
Andrew's running furiously. I think he's gonna look into that for you and report back.
That's all I have to say. I didn't wanna hold you up, sorry about that.
No, no.
But that was,
It's a valid point. It's a valid point.
Needs to flip out like that.
All right. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn. Thanks.
I'll take a second.
And then Andrew, I happen to know some of the other boards do have the parking.
your place is where